have signal. Signal confirmed. Verifying. Decrypting. It's the History Homos podcast. Scott, William, and Patrick cutting through all the slop and trash. Informational snow crash. Go back. Go back. MK Ultra, go insane.
And we're live. Welcome back to the show. This week, obviously, with me as usual is Patrick.
Hello.
We this week are continuing my descent into New England history guy.
New madness. New mania. You're locked in to
A bit, yeah.
Yeah.
I think I might take a little break because this was a pretty dense read, I'll be honest. But
I
I do want to shout out.
appreciate it. I was out in
I
the woods
believe
earlier.
the listener who sent it to me, his first name is Matt. Thank you, Matt, for
Thank you, Matt.
recommending this book to us. I did really like it. It did get a little bit libtard at times. And it's just really funny too, as I saw this author is like pretty willing to go on shows. Like I saw he went on a bunch of podcasts, like at least one podcast that I noted was like
Mhm.
significantly less popular than ours. And
I listened to that same one and it felt like I had to look. I'm like, is this NPR? What
yeah, the
is
guy was
this?
clearly trying to do an NPR like thing. Maybe he
This
tricked the author to think he was NPR or something.
Hey, where's Lakshmi Singh? I
Yeah.
came to meet Lakshmi. Ugh. I sometimes listen to that if I can't, my phone fell on the floor of the
If you're
truck.
trying to fall asleep.
Yeah, if I want to fall asleep at the wheel, I tune to 89,
Yeah.
whatever
No,
the hell.
it's got I've listened to it before too. At least it'll give you like headlines, you know.
Well, I like to know what people are talking like.
Sure, fair
I know what
enough.
they're talking about, but I want to hear how they talk about it, you know?
Fair enough.
Um,
But anyway,
yeah.
this is sort of the story, the stuff we're going to be talking tonight is sort of in the same, ideological tradition of NPR Boston WBUR, as it
Um,
were.
if they made this into a Prairie Home Companion, there'd be another riot in Boston again, and it wouldn't be
Yeah,
about a sports
yet
team.
another.
Yeah, it'd
Okay,
be a
but
16-hour Prairie Home Companion.
yeah,
Just
something like that.
the
It was
most
a dense book. So the book we're talking about is the city state of Boston. I don't remember the first name of the author, but his name is
mock,
Peterson.
mock. Marky Mark.
Mark Peterson. Yeah, and he is a Yale professor. So do with that what you will.
Mm.
No, actually there is I don't want to say he runs cover for a lot of spooky shit in this, but he definitely doesn't emphasize it the way that if I were writing the book, I would.
Didn't
Um
emphasize William Blackstone worth a
well,
lick.
that's another thing is that this fucking guy. And
This
so yeah,
fucking
by the way,
guy.
I am blowing any chance of him coming on the show now. Not that I really ever anticipated it. But
Sorry, Mark. We
sorry,
love
Mark.
your
I
book.
you overlooking William Blackstone is a offense I
It's
cannot abide by.
oh brother, no. Yeah, we're rallying a mob as we speak. There's many mobs in this book.
Yeah. I mean,
Dozens
I
of
feel like
mobs.
mobs are a major feature of this, sort of epoch.
I mean, it's the human condition.
True. Well, yes, I guess it's the entire human history is mobs are kind of a feature, I
Mm,
suppose.
yeah.
But
Um,
yeah,
uh,
so
if just not to spoil anything, but it felt like the primary means of uh, uh getting any justice for anything ever or anything getting done was just a mob of people grabbing somebody as they left the building, justly
yeah.
or otherwise. Yeah,
Yeah, well,
until
that's history
yeah,
for the
even the
most
fire
part. I mean, you got
brigade.
Caesar, you got not leaving a building, I guess, but entering a building.
Yeah, they let them get
Uh
comfortable in there. They
that's
really,
true. Yeah.
yeah, they gave
But it
them
is an
a
effective. I think what you're underlining really is that it's an effective way to eliminate somebody.
yeah, and it was sooner or later, the state had to get there, yeah, be the primary
A monopoly on
dealer.
violence. Yes, I
Yeah,
also
yeah, I hate
would
using
agree.
that. I hate using that fucking yeah. But yeah, ultimately that's what it is. It's like, all right, uh, talk about there's many mutinies I'd love to get to at some point, but we have to start way back when. When do you
Yeah.
want to start? What century for crying
Well,
out
so
loud?
obviously the 1600s, obviously the 17th century,
Hmm.
and we will mention William Blackstone for the record.
In
By the
yeah,
way, when by the way, for those interested in more information about William Blackstone, we are only going to sort of mention him, but we do have a full bonus episode, nice long bonus episode where we discuss the life of William Blackstone, Boston's first inhabitant. But he
Boston's
is
first
merely
son.
a footnote in this story.
Yeah.
Actually, he's not
No, he's
even.
not.
I was gonna say he's literally not a footnote. He's not brought up once, which is fucking criminal. But let's move on. So the point is that one thing I think is important to say before we sort of dive right into the colonization of Massachusetts is that this was the people who arrived here and sort of their mission, I guess, is it is inextricably linked to the movement known as Puritanism, which is sort of like a very English literalist adaptation slash sort of permutation of the Reformation of the Catholic Church,
It's
which it
often referred to
began
as,
with. Yeah, go
sorry,
ahead.
Orthodox Protestantism.
That's a
This is
great way to
this,
put it.
and
Yes.
yeah, ridiculous
So yeah, where it
oxymoron.
began with the Church of England, of course, which, as we know, is a farce that was created for the express purposes of Henry VIII penis. Um, and
The
even though he
royal,
himself died a strict, devout Catholic, so it's worth mentioning that. But yeah, so it was very silly that in light of that, over the next few centuries after Henry VIII started the Church of England, that they would then go to like pretty outrageous lengths to enforce uniformity throughout England and Britain at large. Given that the whole thing is sort of started as like a bit.
farce,
Um,
yeah, to begin
yeah.
with.
And
And so, yeah, uh sorry, do you admit the farce or do you just run with the bit? Yeah, and they
I think they
ran
ran
with
with
it.
the bit.
Oh,
Yeah.
for yeah, hard.
And then
It's
they
stupid.
switched up the bit a little bit, which we'll get into a few times, but took it a little more serious than others. But
Yeah.
yeah, but more importantly, the Puritan movement sort of evolved out of the continuing Reformation from the thought, generally speaking, of John Calvin, who is a theologian
The
of
kid.
the Anglican Church, if I'm not mistaken, officially, but sort of the people who came in his wake, sort of formed what would be the Puritan movement. And they had this idea where they would sort of choose. Well, I'll say this is that the Church of England had this sort of very hierarchical structure, sort of like the Catholic Church, where all of the designations of whose would be. It was like the Catholic Church, the fucking head guy in Canterbury decided who was going to be the local vicar of wherever. And in the Puritan milieu, there was sort of this well, first of all, the Calvinist thought it has a lot to do with volition and your like free will and like accepting things like as a conscious choice and stuff like that. So in light of that, they like were sort of they railed against this idea that they would have this hierarchical religious structure, and they would wanted to pick their own trained theological scholars as being the Puritan religious leaders.
Mm.
And this was a big problem. And then so a lot of these people had to do this in secret. There was something of an inquisition within England. It eventually led to the English Civil War, which we'll touch on briefly. But for anyone really interested in that, I do recommend go check out me and William's episode on the English Civil War. It's quite in depth and pretty descriptive. So go check that out. And it does really count maybe after this because there's a lot of intersectings going on. So it's not a prerequisite. Um, but what I was going to say. So one of the two things that happened was, first of all, they fought them. That was one of the things they did in
Or
to sort of fight away this. But the other thing was like, okay, let's just get some money from a aristocrat who is sympathetic to our cause and the fealty of that aristocrat, who I believe is the Duke of Bristol. Was that the guy who is was the one who is this pure? It doesn't matter. I'm sorry, English people, if I get this wrong. I believe it was
sorry.
him though. Good point. Honestly, why am I sorry? It shouldn't be.
The Duke
Um,
of Fluke, for all I give a hoot. How about that?
but
How's that
either
for
way, it might have been
Shakespeare?
Lincoln too. I don't know. Who cares? But yes. But either way, so he got in the king's ear basically to allow first of all the Puritan colony at Plymouth, which is very famous as being known as the Pilgrims. Actually, they were living in fucking the Netherlands for a minute, and then they
Yeah.
got the charter to go do that. But that's a whole other conversation we don't really need to get into here.
Boy, they got sick of them quick.
Yeah, I think it
Because
was the other way around actually, because like they were just like our whole thing. Here's the thing about English people: they love themselves, and they can't just live in it can't just live in the Netherlands and be like, yeah, we're just like you guys. They have to go and make their own thing,
are they
and
Lutherans
they
up there? I think so.
something like that. But I think more
Yeah.
importantly, they had tolerance there, and
Mm.
it wasn't like what the Puritans wanted was, and this is very important. I'm not just sort of spitball or bullshitting here. This is a really important aspect of what made Massachusetts special. Is that or New England special, I should say, was this idea that they weren't going to be just anybody's subject. They were going to have like a state that is godly and represented. So you can understand, like, when I say Puritanism is like a religious movement, it's also a political movement. Like they had this idea that, um, I mentioned before that it's based on this idea of like having this volition, and they rejected all kinds of hierarchical structures. Like not quite the king. I think they still had some respect for the idea of there being a king, I
Mm.
suppose. But more importantly, they were like, no, there should be parliament, should be like the guy, we should have like a
Mm.
representative republican government essentially.
Mm.
And these Puritans who came to Massachusetts Bay were like, this is our opportunity to create this sort of almost mythical religious city, like almost like a utopia. And again, this is also in the wake of Thomas More's book Utopia, which is a guy who's also in the same religious tradition. You're starting to see where this is all going, by the way. um and
How does this happen? How,
yeah,
why do all these people think alike and all
I
keep
think
making
it's
the
like
same? in the
it's
States.
like a Heidegger or like Uncle Ted thing where like if this is like an idea that just like a genie got out of the bottle and it got legs of its own and it sort of worked its way through people. You know what I'm saying? Almost
Hmm.
like a like Rocco's Basilisk or like Nick Land like
Oh
Techno Future or
no.
something. It was an
So
idea that had arrived and
I
it
know what it is.
everyone on Earth seemingly stopped and did something to make it happen.
Sure, yeah. Well, I mean, it's kind of if if the prime, the primer for it is we forsake the Catholic Church. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we're, transferring uh that authority to the king, and it's just something that happens so immediately and so I don't know, doomed to fall, cave in on itself, I guess, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think you're right. That is sort of where they were coming from,
Because
and I think in
they
light of
have
that,
kings
they
every
felt like
year. Every couple of
right
years, they got a new king.
it can be that way.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is they were like it's important that we have this sort of like civil structure that's informed by our really specific autistic religious beliefs. And and that would be like a backstop against like the total because I will say that there's something to the idea that like in the lack of hierarchy that's and this has like been said by many people by the way like in the absence of the Catholic Church or any sort of like one of these big hierarchical church structures, what do you get? You get like fucking these like mini mall or these like strip mall
Yeah.
Protestant
I
churches
was,
and shit
thank you.
like
Yes, I was gonna say this. You reminded me. You ever see the like whatever preacher like comes flying in on a like suspended
I
like
haven't seen that. That's
dude,
doesn't surprise me though
it's
either.
so funny. And he's like narrating. He's like, "That's right, y'all. I'm coming down. And when I get there, ooh, you'll see." Uh like and it's worth looking up for the folks at home. But that guy, like in some cyberpunk dystopia in like 12 years or something, sent back Puritanism as Rocco's
Yeah,
Basilisk to
yeah, it could
to
be.
make
Yeah,
himself possible.
it could be. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I'm glad I remember. That's
Yeah, no, for
happening.
sure. And that guy is going to exist in the future. Like the techno enhanced prosperity gospel, cyberpunk, dystopian preacher guy. Yeah, that will exist sometime in our lifetime, I'm sure. Um, but okay. So now
We're
that
in
we've
New
set the
England.
stage of who we're talking about, this is who we're talking about.
These
Um,
guys.
and yeah, they
10 buckles apiece, these people.
that's for sure.
Yeah,
And so they came to Massachusetts Bay. They were invited to the Shawmut Peninsula by one William Blackston, if you will.
give it up.
And
First,
he just selflessly gave them his land. I think he took money for it, obviously, but he
a
could have
couple
been like,
bucks.
"Fuck off, and die in Charlestown with
A lot of people,
the
yeah.
mosquitoes."
Well, yeah, he could have, I mean, he couldn't say that. They'd show up and he's just one guy, but
Yeah,
wouldn't pay them no mind. But some people paid him more than what he asked, which was like a pittance. They were
yeah, it
like,
was
hey,
two shillings.
thanks, dude. This is swell. What are these blueberries?
Right.
Apples? You've been working on these? So yeah, and the guy
You
worked.
made your own apples?
What? Been here a couple years,
This
dude.
peninsula's off the hook.
Let's
Yeah,
ruin it.
so yeah, well, no, I wouldn't go that far.
No, not yet.
Okay, so now that I've set the stage, they've made their first, they've made their colony at on Shawmut Peninsula and formed the city of Boston and sort of spread their tentacles everywhere. And we have here's another fucking episode plug here, but this one isn't behind a paywall. This one is just the previous the when we did the episode about the changing of the changes in the land. Great episode, great book by the way. Um but we talked a little bit about the fact that money was immediately an issue um because of the fact that they had no income and this book put a little bit more of a fine point on why. So basically, as people were coming there, so the first like 20, 30 years of them coming there, it was like a nice little upward 45-degree angle on the chart, and people were able to sort of stake out a freehold. And by the way, this is really important too. And but the Boston, even though it only had a charter for one colony, they themselves took it upon themselves in the spirit of Puritan thought, mind you. They then themselves gave out sub charters to various smaller settlements outwards in the New England and Massachusetts hinterlands. Um, under the strict conditions that, of course, they conduct themselves in a manner befitting of a Massachusetts Bay Colony charter sanctioned town, which is to
No
say,
sleeping in.
well, that's true too. We always sort of glance over that stuff because I was just about to focus on all like the nice things about it, which was, everyone had to live communally and no one was to go hungry. That was certainly
It's a good pitch.
a major thing, yeah. And if someone came up short, everyone in the rest of the community was to pitch in. And
Hmm.
further, they would be holding free elections and choose their selectmen. Which, by the way, selectmen is still a system that goes today in Massachusetts. I don't know if it's in any other
Hmm.
states, but I remember at least in the town that I grew up in, Stoughton, Massachusetts, we did the highest ranking official in the town was a selectman. Um,
Big deal,
yeah,
man.
I mean, I don't think it is because
That's
those
the
people are
selectman's
fucking
house.
trash, by the way.
They, you see that? That's the selectman's house. What do you mean? I think he lives on the third floor.
Yeah, it wasn't that nice. Yeah. But my point is that right away they immediately start implementing this like sort of radical, for the time, radically democratic or republican at least structure that also incorporated like a lot of very, very radical property based. So there was an idea of private property, but again, there was this sort of social commitment on the part of your social expectations to can be a charitable and a good Puritan person who lived in these places or whatever.
Bring
And
enough for the whole class, as they say.
yes, that's a good
Yeah.
point. Yeah. And then also, so this was extra easy for the first 20 years of their existence because people were continuing. Remember in the other book we read, they were talking about how like the fish leapt right into your
Mm.
fucking into
Yes.
your nets and stuff. So people were getting bullshitted obviously to come here. And when they got there, they needed to buy like their initial supplies, which were often easily manufactured on site there in Massachusetts. And there's this little cottage economy where people who had already established themselves there for the 5, 3, 4, 5, 10, 20 years were able to sell products that they had raised and created to the new arrivals, and the new arrivals would supply the colony and the people who already existed there with specie, which is coinage, like
Hmm.
silver and gold coins, primarily silver. Gold is really something that like banks held on to for the most part.
Hmm.
Um, but
Those small coins were necessary. They still, you know, they were still however many generations on, it took a lot of years. They were still subjects to England. They still
right,
wondered how the king was doing, and I'm sure they missed money. I'm sure they were sick of trading for shit. Yeah,
yeah.
maybe.
Another thing, well, it's worth saying though, is that this was kind of a problem because oh yeah, so the problem was is the 1850s or 1650s rather was the English Civil War, and again refer back to that other episode we did, but the Puritans won. They kicked the fucking shit out of, and due in no small part, by the way, to the American New English colonists. A lot of them went back to go fight in the English Civil War, and they were really what turned the tide on the Royalist forces and led Cromwell to victory. So, in essence, this shut off the valve of people coming. And now this only lasted like 7 years, mind you, so it wasn't a permanent thing. But you can imagine what it was like in New England when you're like, oh fuck, there's no reason for these people to come here. It's just a slightly harder life to come here. So why would they? Why would they risk their lives, their families on the 2 month or nearly 2 month voyage to come over here and die? Not that they understood, how people got sick, but it doesn't matter. Um, why would you do it? It's silly. What do we have to offer? Um, well, there were many things, but my point is that less people came, and
Yeah.
in doing so, the cash flow dried up. Um, so they had a really big problem with their hands, and they initially, and we talked about this in the other New England episode, the previous New England episode, but they filled the gap with wampum.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. These lovely little trinkets.
Yeah, which were
Yeah.
made from like I guess clams or something.
Clamshells, whale bones sometimes.
Yeah, and
And they'd
cloth, of
aug
course, too.
yeah, and they'd auger them out. Just make like little noodles or whatever,
Something like
like little
that. Yeah,
pasta
and they like
noodles.
dangle. It was sort of like a fringed like Roger Daltrey jacket that like was
Yeah.
currency. You know what I mean? But with like little pieces of pearl, like mother of pearl at the end. And
Good deal.
yes, but the
Fly
English
as hell.
colonists, they saw that the Indians were like were exchanging it like as like a part of a treaty. Now this what they actually used it for was like to be like, here, I'm giving you a gift to show you that, we like each other. And in doing so is implicit in this exchange as the agreement that you're going to use this piece of hunting grounds, and we're going to use that piece of grazing grounds, whatever. And
Yeah.
whatever. The point is that exchange occurred, and the English colonists were like, "Oh, look, that's money." So they started using it as
Yeah.
money. And
It
again,
was
go back
also
to go ahead.
sorry. You can also appreciate the fact that it was kind of a way of if you had a lot of wampum, meant you had a lot of good word with people,
Good
which
point. Yeah,
is, yeah,
actually.
like check out my jacket, dude. It's so heavy. I
People
can't.
like people must really like me, yeah. But the way and it ended up working is they started using it as like as legal tender in the colony, and this sort of fucked over the Indians. But again, if you want to get more into this, listen to our other episode on it.
Oh yeah.
But this led to this really big issue between these Indians who are now basically going to starve to death
Hmm.
because of the fact that they've changed their entire income onto um, creating this shit that was essentially worthless now, and displaced themselves in order to be closer to the source of it and stuff like that. And that was a big deal. So that led to the Pequot War. People may know the Pequots now as being the people who own the Foxwoods Casino, but I went there one
Foxwoods.
time and went to the Pequot Indian Museum. And I got to tell you, the ones that are around now, they look like they're from a tribe, but I don't know if it's the Pequot tribe. I'll say that.
Interesting. Okay.
And this is like a common trope, by the way. I'm pretty sure many people understand this to be the truth because there was a King of the Hill joke even one time about Indian gaming where they showed the Indian gaming guys and they were like a Jewish guy with like a feather. Like,
No
what I mean?
shit.
Like, yeah, this is a really common like thing. It's known that this is a thing.
Yeah. Okay. So, um, it really is tragic that these people, had their faith put into and time and energy put into making
Yeah.
something just to, in the hopes that they'd be able to buy better furs in the winter, in food in the
Well, they didn't
winter.
want the furs. That's the thing. They wanted the cloth actually from the Europeans. They were
Okay.
trading furs for and wampum for cloth and stuff that they
Mhm.
that like were actually useful.
Mhm.
Um
We
uh
got plenty of furs. But yeah, so Pequod War, I think that was what's his face?
King Philip.
Uh,
King Philip's War is after actually,
yeah,
but they're very
that
connected actually because um
I
I
think it
think
was
King Philip was on the English side in the Pequot War,
right, right.
if I'm not mistaken. This is the other thing. these guys just they used any and all they used any and all like crack between the groups.
Mm.
They never learned, these Indians never learned to all team up. I mean, they kind of tried to with the King Philip War, but it is what it is. But so yeah, the
Someone
okay,
throws something, it's over.
we gotta backtrack. We gotta backtrack.
Yeah.
So another thing I want to talk about is we'll get there in a minute. We got to backtrack a little bit. I want to talk about the fact that one of the main reasons why they came to America was to convert the Indians.
Mm.
And they specifically had this idea, this theological notion that they were like the new St. Peter. And they were like the new they were the ones like, so specifically Philippi. We
Mm.
actually just talked a little while ago talking about the Battle of Philippi in ancient Roman times, oldie Roman times. Um,
Eventful place.
Very eventful place, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, very eventful place because it's also the home of where Alexander the Great is from.
No shit.
It's in Macedonia, yeah. Philip is the guy who it's named after. Philip is Alexander the Great's father. So it really is a very, very notable place. But yes, yeah, so they had this idea that Philippi was the first place outside of Palestine
Mm.
where anyone converted to Christianity. And I don't know that someone can correct me if I'm wrong here, but I believe somebody had gotten a vision or something, maybe St. Peter, I don't know, about a dream maybe that there was like a voice coming from Philippi saying, "Come over and help us," or "Come over and save us." I think
Mm.
is, but somewhere there's "Come over and save us." And in the original flag and logo for the charter of the Massachusetts Bay Colony, it depicts an Indian, and he's saying none other than "Come over and save us."
Mm.
And they were very much explicitly drawing this line between them and the original apostles of Christianity, and
Mhm.
they were going to be like the New World's apostle, basically.
Yeah.
And they
Yeah.
wanted to create this almost mythical city, Boston, that would be like a holy city, not in like it was like had religious significance, but that it would be like, meaning it would a place that Jesus was. Like they're not like Mormons or nothing, but they were like, this is like the place that everyone talks about when they talk about a good Christian place. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So that was like a really huge focus on that. And now
Yeah.
that said, in the
Yeah.
same breath, these guys were Freemasons, I think. Like, and they were also definitely into alchemy and weird, kooky stuff.
Yes.
Because
Yeah.
they had this idea in the written into the charter is this sort of boilerplate line about how 1/5 of all of the gold royal, I love the spelling, royal mines, ROYALLMYNES, royal mines of gold, GOULDE, and silver. So they
I
had this
start
idea
writing
that
like this.
there would be silver and gold in Massachusetts, and there was not. I'm sorry, the
No,
spoiler alert, there was not.
not a lick.
But they were like, no matter, we're alchemists. We'll make our own gold and silver. And I don't know
Positive
how that
thinking.
worked out for them. I think a bunch of people bought land to get like the chemicals needed. They had this idea that they were going to get chemicals out of like the beach in order to make silver out of like some
Nice.
alchemical process.
Yeah, and it really, I mean, what's his face? John D, the Queen's court magician.
Yeah.
You know, these guys are. What's funny about alchemists, it repetitively, throughout history, is it really just does seem to be one guy pitching that he can do it, and pe people will go with it because they take it metaphorically, maybe. But some these true alchemist or whatever have you, whatever a cult persuasion
Yeah.
anyone that decides to ascribe to, uh, they believe it, but they're what they're pitching you is not what you're agreeing to. I'm certain that so many of these people were sent there just to die, just to, um, encroach an inch at a time every decade by decade, just to
Hmm.
lay the land and, establish something that would eventually be useful to multinational interests, which don't take long. I mean, it is the Massachusetts Bay Colony uh, Company, Massachusetts Bay Company, I believe, at some
Yeah.
point. So,
That's the thing. You got to understand. It was like all under. It was like everything was a company back then. Like if you
mhm,
had, like, Virginia was a company. You know what I mean? Like it
right,
had
right.
to be viewed in the light of that because it couldn't be a government because it's the king's government.
Hmm.
And the king allowed this company to exist,
Hmm.
essentially. Let me just real quick. I looked up, was John Winthrop of Boston a Freemason? Hang on.
Mm.
Were the Puritan founders of Boston Freemasons?
Oh, I bet my
Oh, it says they're not. It says they're definitely against it.
I'm sure. But I don't know,
Oh,
man.
okay, it says here. I see what's going on here, though.
Yeah,
The
please.
Freemasonry emerged later in the colonial period with notable figures like Paul Revere and Samuel Adams. Okay, well that checks out in my mind too. By the
Yeah, well,
way.
I mean, there's we have Washington in a Freemason apron in a
Oh yeah,
portrait.
yeah, yeah. Let's not
Yeah.
even
Oh,
start
I
with
can't
that.
wait to get to Washington. I have such a schizo freaking
I have
pain in my spine
my
about
schizo take on George Washington that he isn't real. He's like
me.
amalgam.
Holy shit. Is that what the wooden teeth means? Is that an alchemical turn of
I don't know.
phrase?
I don't
They
know.
goofing on us?
I don't know. Well, but
Sons of guns.
that's for another day, I think.
Oh, dude.
Um, but
But yeah,
yeah,
he
go
wasn't
ahead, go
real.
ahead.
There is a point, and we'll know when we get there, where I think that Washington buys the presidency, and it's like decades in advance, and we'll get there.
Okay. Interesting. Well,
I
we'll
can't
get
wait.
there. I don't know if we're gonna get there in this episode for sure, but
Holy sh
either way.
No, no, it's in the book.
Oh, wait, okay, interesting.
Yeah,
Anyway, but okay,
stupid.
so now let's get into so okay. One other thing is the other thing you gotta understand about these Puritan guys, radical egalitarians to a point. Now, well, here's the thing. I'll give them a little cred here. I view them as
Please.
genuinely espousing what the Bible prescribes as far as like how to view other people. Now, some of the now listen, there's some issues here because there's a couple cunts in the and there's a couple bad apples in this bunch. But by and large, I think the
Bad bunch.
historical record will show that that particularly the book highlights it too, by the way, is that they were in the 1600s pretty free with letting slaves go if they felt that they were ill-gotten.
Hmm.
Um and while they also like again they a lot of the early people we're talking about here did pretty early on espouse anti-slavery beliefs. Now,
Mhm.
before you start getting all libtard spooked here, they did so on the basis that they were like, yeah, 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 yeah. We can't be living around Africans. Are you fucking crazy?
No.
That was the at least a non-zero amount of the reasoning behind it was like these two cultures shouldn't mix. Now, should they be Christians? Absolutely. We should export Christianity to them in Africa. But these two civilizations were not like meant to live alongside one another. So therefore, slavery is it's immoral and it's bad for the people. So yeah, they also had
It's Oh, dude, there's a million and one ways why slavery's bad. It's bad for the slave, and um,
bad for the economy. It's bad for the people
it's bad
around.
for
It's
everything,
It
dude.
really is bad. And people I it's crazy that
It's
there's like
so
people who
bad.
LARP and say it's good or like people who go like, yeah, man, the fucking Confederacy was fucking based.
Remember when? Yeah, I mean,
I mean, it's
you,
like, bro, you want to
dude,
hang around with them that much?
the Knights of the Golden Circle and those fools? I
No, I
mean,
just means you want to hang around with the slaves that much, man. That's what I mean.
yeah.
Thomas Jefferson, world's first Whigger, by the way.
Oh.
Thomas Jefferson was goofy status with many of his opinions. And this book really hammered it home for me, by the way.
Sure, I can. I hope you have some highlights because
Sure, when we get there,
Ralph
but
Waldo Emerson gave me like a zap when I read something he wrote at some point, and I'll remember that Clay Aiken video I sent you.
the Trayvon one where he's wearing the
That,
hoodie.
yeah, that's what it reminded me of. All right, we'll
All
get
right,
there.
well, we'll get there when we get there. But
Um,
anyway, so here's the other thing. So they were against slavery, generally speaking, and more importantly, they wanted to discourage slavery, mass slavery, at least, like, or at least a source of an economic engine, as it were. They were, again, this is Calvinism. They had this idea that the human volition was at the source of all the crossroads of the universe, basically. And ergo, being a free man who works for the sweat on his brow, very libertarian, by the way. I mean, unironically, is kind of libertarian. They, um, yeah, if you were working for your own sort of self effacement,
mhm.
um, that was a good thing. And and again, obviously this is really obvious because they like had this idea of like everyone should vote and have a hand in civic duty and all this stuff.
Never knew
So
that shit.
whatever.
All right.
Um, aesthetic differences. um,
Well, and but Calvin, what ultimately came of Calvinism is this really wacky uh idea that some people are just fated to you know never be able to see the light of God. Um,
yes,
that's
that is true, but that gets
I
into
don't
that whole
believe
like
that.
fucking that like phrenology stuff later.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
But regardless,
um,
I'm just saying.
regardless.
But the point is that they had this sort of egalitarian, liberal mind view, worldview for the time being.
Mm-mm.
And but that said, this money problem was not going away.
No.
And so they made this sort of Faustian bargain in
Person
order
walking
to
around money. Walking around
I,
money. That's all it is. Anything it's small change,
they
right?
made a Faustian bargain essentially with like slavery essentially in order to like not only subsist, because subsisting they probably could have just done, but here's the issue. Could they have just survived feeding themselves time immemorial, just living off the land like that? Yes. But you're
Mhm.
now missing the entire point of the Puritan
Yeah. Project.
project,
Yeah.
which is we need to educate more people and get people more closer to sort of Christian nirvana, as it were.
Hmm.
And we need to be perpetually striving towards genuine understanding of all peoples about the gospel and the message of Jesus and stuff like that. And
Which
not a terrible aim, but the point is they ended up having to like utilize the slave
airball.
engine in order to make this happen. So as I mentioned, the money had stopped coming from overseas, from the UK, from people coming over and bringing it. They're like, well, fuck, we need to figure out a new source of income. And the issue is that we can make awesome products for consumption around here, because but like the food in New England was bar none. It was great. But the problem is shipping that over to the UK or to England or anywhere in Europe for the most part, that's a no-go. It's not going to last. It's a month and a half. And why would they bother when they can grow all the same crops back in Europe? Now, there were places in America, like in Virginia, where they were growing tobacco that was not able to be grown anywhere else on earth. So they had this unique position in which they could then make money, even though there was long time periods between the shipping or whatever, and it was such a hot commodity too that they were very profitable. Now, what did New England have to offer, besides learned people? Well, this was something that, so in this time period around the time that the Massachusetts Bay Colony started to take off, the Puritans also settled several places in the West Indies, you know, places like Bermuda. This wasn't all just Puritans, by the way. This was also Anglicans, but
Yeah, I'm sure
generally
they're.
speaking, yeah, just generally speaking, Protestants in the Anglosphere in the West Indies, and the sugar boom, the one that, by the way, produced one Alexander Hamilton, you know, started taking off in the Caribbean there. And the issue was that now thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of slaves started pouring into the New World generally, but more importantly, English speaking colonies in the West Indies. Now, and the other thing is that this place in Bermuda and all these other places that sugar is produced, it's great for growing anything. You can grow anything you want there, but they're thinking, well, fuck, we want to make a shitload of money. Why would we want to spend some of our land on on growing the food to feed the slaves when we could just have max out? You know, we've all played fucking RTS games. We all want to play. We want to max out our profitability here. So they grew just that. And where are we going to get our food? New England steps up and says, "Hey guys, we're not very far from you at all. You have a shitload of cash from, or actually, you're going to give us sugar. You're going to give us shitloads of sugar in exchange for dried fish, wheat, you know, all kinds of stuff that people eat, dried, or, you know, jerky, essentially salt beef, salt pork, stuff that slaves love. It's good for them. It's got all their vitamins and minerals. And you give us sugar and we'll sell the sugar then back to, by the way, these guys are shifty. They figure out they'll probably work out a better deal than the idiots down in Bermuda could have gotten. So they ended up cleaning up pretty good. Another thing that they did was they had access to we might have talked about this in the other episode actually as well, but they had access to fish year round,
Mhm.
right off the dock essentially. And
Mhm.
whereas
Jumping into their laps.
right, whereas in basically, yeah, in Spain, there, you know, in Spain and Italy and other places that are Catholic still, they had like this one time of year where dried fish was a really important staple of the diet, that being Lent, which just ended for us and actually everybody. Um, and that said, but so there was this time of year that they were able to make a fucking clean up
Yeah.
on Spanish markets for selling these fish that were, you know, they usually had to sell to slaves the rest of the year. So this was like a huge source. People got fucking rich this way.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that would tide them over for however long it took for, the colony to become more established. Um, they had the French off to the east too to contend
Yeah.
with.
In Acadia,
Um,
yeah.
yeah, and they,
Acadie.
I, nice people, I bet. They had a hard
We'll
go of
never
it.
know. They don't exist anymore.
Sorry, guys. Yeah, it was the
So yeah,
English.
that's like the upper tip of Maine and also what is now New Brunswick. All that, like where Frankie McDonald lives, all that shit was Acadie. It's
Beautiful
now,
place.
yeah, Maine, Acadia National Park is named after it. It was encompassed in that. And
Mhm.
the southern tip of Maine was settled originally by William Blackstone, of course, but he left. And yeah, Ferdinando Gorges was supposed to be the bro, but he didn't
Oh,
stick around.
too
And
gorgeous.
later, the Massachusetts Bay Colony ended up being like yoink.
Yeah, I mean, well, from what I recall, the actual people, yeah, it was the Massachusetts Bay Colony Company that said yoink. The
Yeah,
actual people that lived there wanted no beef whatsoever.
of
Even
course, they're just
even
people.
yeah, God love them, man. But these damn powers and
Well, they were
principalities.
living pretty rough. They were like interbreeding with the Micmacs and all this shit. Like
Yeah, well,
they
yeah,
had like
but
a 50% interbreeding rate of with
yeah, but they were
Micmacs.
Catholic. They were
They were.
Catholic,
I listen. I'm not fucking
and they
coming
spoke
down on these
French.
guys. Yeah, this.
And
Yeah, listen. Nobody's perfect.
Yeah, so I'm, back and forth, back and forth. But either way, they certainly weren't intruding on any, well, of that they were aware of. They didn't know they were intruding.
Right.
Um, but they had to be moved. And some of the worst, stuff I read was that part. Um, that guy, what's his name? A British officer, but a Scotsman.
A
Sorry
Scottish
to
guy, yeah,
say.
he had something to prove, I think. But they settled.
Yeah,
They decided they were going to make Nova Scotia basically, and they put
hmm
this one psycho in charge, basically.
there's a few psychos in this.
Yeah,
But he had his men mutiny on him in what, 1707, 1710.
and they
They
just kept giving him and put him in charge of things.
Yeah, the guys thought they were just going there to burn burn the French fort and Amscray. Then he says, "All right, guys, start digging in, setting up." And they're like, "No, I'm going
Yeah,
home. This isn't. What are we doing here? That's not what you said." And the same thing happened twice. They actually, no, they burned the fort and then left. The first time, and then the second time they demanded a an English officer, and then all of those troops were replaced with British defects that they sent
right.
over to also be, poked and prodded and stabbed and killed and die. Um, so,
But
uh,
the thing was, is that he thought, oh, hey, I could just poach from the Massachusetts citizenry because these
mhm.
guys are fucking soldiers of fortune, basically. Not only did they have a major hand in the whole English Civil War thing, but they did the fucking, we didn't even mention that Pequot War was started due to fucking gay ops. It was like a Dutch gay op, if you remember.
No, not a
The
Dutch gay op.
Dutch trappers attacked the Indians, and the only guy who has died was an English guy who just happened to be with them, and they went, "Hey, English, the Indians killed one of you guys," and then they were like, "Well, we got to do something about it."
Yeah, yeah, they did
And so
kill one of
basically,
us.
the Dutch were like, "Oh, let's use the English to take care of this Indian tribe that's in our way,"
Yeah,
and it
of course.
worked.
Yeah, well, yeah, like a glove. Um, Unfortunately, this is a lot of just people being, people on the ground being pitted against each other
Right.
from afar. Um, I don't even know how to pronounce it. The Mickawakas,
Micmacs?
yeah, the Micmac tally. No, sorry. Um, they were what all along with the rest of the Acadians just packed into boats and shipped off against their will.
Yeah.
The
So yeah, that's what happens. Well, we're jumping ahead a little bit here. We didn't talk about the
I
King
thought
Philip's
so.
War either. Yeah.
Yeah.
King Philip's War happened first. King Philip's War was like sort of like the last ditch effort on the part of the Indian Confederacy, as it were,
Mhm.
uh to um to sort of shake off the Intifada,
Mhm.
the English settlers. And it
Yeah.
was led by a guy that was known as King Philip, named after, so there was the original guy, I don't remember his name. um no, they named, yeah, so they named the first guy Philip, and then they named his two sons Philip and Alexander. See a fucking theme here, guys.
Yeah. Yeah.
um and Philip ended up being Philip II Metacom, ended up being the head of the Indian Confederacy, and they got their asses kicked. They did not win. um
It's curious that the pretense for all this is like we're gonna go a step. It had,
That's an episode. We'll do a whole episode of King Philip's War another day, by the way. Go
sure.
ahead
Oh
though.
yeah. The most tragic part of it being the burning of William Blackstone's home. Uh,
Yeah, true.
yeah. Sorry. No, probably not.
No, I don't think that was
Um,
the most tragic part. It was
oh,
tragic though.
so much
No, you know
bad.
what? It was fucking tragic.
It
He had ancient
was
books. He had ancient books
tomes, man.
in
You can't
Latin and
call a
shit.
tome anything anymore. You can't. Nothing's really a tome anymore. But it's, King Philip's War notwithstanding, the fact that these people are under, the impression that they're echoing the establishment of the first church at Philippi,
Yeah.
and in Paul,
Hmm.
right? Um,
Oh, it was Paul. Sorry, I was saying Peter before because I know Peter is the
am I
first
wrong?
church. It
No,
could be
no, that's
they were
Peter.
together. I think they were broing out at the time.
Listen, the bros gotta get together and
I do
establish a
think they were
church,
at
not
least together during that time period. So we're not totally wrong, but whatever.
you, you don't. They didn't kill anybody. They didn't
Yeah.
encroach on anybody. They
No, they
they
didn't. They did not.
not in this, not in the least, not in the slightest. So how, it doesn't gel. It doesn't make sense. The equation is totally obtuse, how these
Yeah.
people will, and I guess it speaks to the whole, every man a priest now under Protestantism. Um,
Yeah.
but no, it's not because
Smuggies. Smuggies, dude.
listen, I'm taking a prescription for Smuggies, but the Catholic Church, unfortunately, they're kind of just taking a note off of that. It really
Well, consider the
is.
fact that the Catholic Church was in full-throated support of slavery at the time.
Yeah, they were
Not doing great stuff. Yeah, it was funny. I was talking to like my Catholic, associate, and he was talking about. He was like,
associate.
these fucking Puritans, they banned Christmas, and I'm like, yeah, but they didn't like slavery, and the Catholic Church liked slavery at the time.
Yeah.
I mean, just come on. I mean, just don't be like this. Don't be like such a, just
Eyes
like
on the
it.
prize.
Yeah, just
Eyes on the
try to be
prize.
like, hey, maybe they had some things right. All right. Like,
Everybody gets
they
something right.
banned Christmas.
Something. Yeah, they ban what? Just celebrate. What are they gonna
Don't
do?
even bother. Listen, it's what it is, dude. This is just one of the
Dude,
things. Just the way it's like one of those things. Just the way that like evangelicals will say stupid shit like, oh, hang on, I almost did a Philly accent, but you Catholics, you worship Mary. That's satanic. You're worshiping a lady. It's like,
all right.
all right,
Uh,
yeah, I know you were told that as a child, but but that doesn't mean that you have to A, believe it, and B, continue the fucking animosity irrespective of what the belief is.
mhm,
Um, but same thing with
mhm,
the banning Christmas thing. But either way,
mhm.
I'm getting off topic here. My
We're
point is
way.
is that in these two wars, there were Indian captives who were traded for as slaves, and they utilized the the theological justification of Saint Augustine, just war,
No,
in which
don't
Saint
listen to
Augustine
him.
describes a potential. Saint Augustine doesn't describe a war. Saint Augustine describes a theoretical war in which you were just minding your own business, doing literally nothing, and another army just came in and attacked you, you would be justified in defending yourself. That is the concept of just
Mhm.
war in an Augustinian sense. And they said, "Oh, good. We'll just kill all these Indians and then sell a few as slaves because we need
Mm.
money."
We need walking around money, man. Um,
Now,
uh,
I want to say this is that there was
let's,
it was a crossroads moment here where there
yeah.
was a guy named Thomas Downing who was the leader of the military outfit for the King Philip's War and the Pequot War. And he said, "Hey guys, we just made a lot of money off selling these Indians. Let's just do it forever." So basically,
Oh,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
wait,
But so there
wait.
was a
Go
crossroads
ahead.
moment where
Yeah.
Winthrop and all the other guy, or not just Winthrop, but the people in Massachusetts Bay were like, "Yeah, Downing, we're gonna pass on that one. You go back to England." And he did, and
Yeah.
he is the Downing for which Downing Street is
Yeah.
named after. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
10
Yeah.
Downing or whatever, where Mrs. Thatcher's husband got his fucking underwear soiled.
What House of Horrors.
I
Yeah, he
mean,
went back
yes,
and
actually, I'm sure
yeah.
bad stuff happened in the basement there
Yeah, no, tell me you couldn't
with
like if
Ted
they just
Heath's metal hands, dude.
Scott, you've been in the sensory deprivation tank.
I
Jeez, I'm
have.
flipping. The imagine they vacate that building. They take everything out of it, but you just go in there and I don't know. Does the experiment work better if you know or don't know where you're walking through? But I bet you get the heebie-jeebies, you know?
10 Downing?
At 10 Downing, you walk through there after they the same way they empty a place out to, move
Well, I imagine
move
any place that's been emptied out has like a liminal sort of feeling.
all right, maybe just they take all the Queen's pictures out and all the
They have
scary
pictures of the
paintings.
Queen there? I would think that that'd be the one place they wouldn't have pictures of the Queen.
This bitch is always walking around.
It's actually British law that every citizen must have a picture of the Queen on them at all times.
It's in my wallet. I swear. I think I left it at home. I'm so sorry.
Oi,
Please
mate,
don't.
what's all this then? Where's your fucking Queen license?
No, no, not that. It's your television license. Yeah.
Anyway, so let's
So
get back to the matter at hand. So, but there was a moment where they were like, "Are we going to be the baddies?"
yeah.
Essentially, and they
Now,
said, "No, we're not going to be the baddies, but we will sell fish and salt pork to the baddies."
at at some point, I don't remember when. I might be It happens at some point, but I do believe there was after King Philip's War, there was an issue as to they did sell the slaves, but they didn't want them around, so they sold them to the Portuguese and the
Well, the
Azores.
Portuguese is just a code word for Jews.
Listen, we're not gonna we're not gonna we're not gonna take that standing up, so we're gonna sit down
Yeah.
and just pretend.
They say that no, what's his name? No, whatever. Columbus Day is coming up. We'll do a Columbus Day episode maybe.
Yeah, we'll save the Columbus Day.
Columbus might have been a tribe, man. Maybe been a member of the Pequot Indian tribe as well.
Uh, you're a Pequot? I'm a Pequot.
Yeah. I'm
Okay.
only half Pequot. My mother's Pequot.
It's my
Um
good half.
the
Um,
good half, yeah. Um Anyway, so let's move on. Let's move on a little bit to like the Acadia thing is now, by the way. So now we're in the early 1700s, and oh wait, no, we're not. Edward
oh, oh,
Andros.
oh,
This is so
this
great.
dickhead.
I didn't even fucking know about this. Was news to me.
Somebody get this guy
There
off
was
the
a
stage.
fucking revolution
Yeah,
in 1689.
yeah, insane. This Andros
Well,
character literally, go on, yeah, set the
Well, so
stage.
so Winthrop, I'm not starting with I think Winthrop's kids actually more importantly, but the people who were in sort of the hoi polloi of the
Mhm.
uh of the Massachusetts Bay Company slash colony decided they were like, they
Lemmigan.
were, I mean, this is like 70 years into the experiment nearly, or it's like 50 50 some odd years into the experiment, and they uh they decide that they're gonna like sort of. And there's the other thing is they Connecticut is a thing. The Hartford Plantation Colony, I believe, and some other place in Connecticut. That's how little I think about you, Connecticut, by the way.
Sorry,
Um, and also, of
it's
course, the Plymouth
best tobacco.
Plantation. Plymouth Plantation, of course, was a nice Puritan. And they created something called the New England Confederacy, or
Uh,
the New England
y-
Confederacy.
yes. At some point there was a
Yeah.
union of the
Of
colonies or
the
something.
specifically Puritan colonies, because they did
Hmm.
not extend an invite to Roger Williams. They did not in Providence. They did not extend a welcome to anyone in New Hampshire or Maine, although there were many people there. Um,
Shout
and
out
it was
Roger Williams, best friend of Billy Blacks,
he was a
Billy
good
Blackstone.
pal of Billy Blackstone. Yeah.
Yeah, took him in
Um,
on his travels.
and
But
vice versa. But the
mhm,
so this was like an explicitly Puritan thing. But anyway, so right, we got to talk about John Hull too. Very important.
very important.
John Hull was so okay. We talked about the money problems before, so they're starting to get all this silver income from. We're doing okay with time, by the way. I think. Well, I mean, this is. We're gonna skip over some of the stuff that's in here because I find it to be somewhat libtard. But the other
Mhm.
way, so John Hull was a guy who decided that hey, we need to like have some staying power with our currency. We can't keep using these fucking shitty silver doubloons that that are sort of made by the Spanish Empire primarily, particularly in light of the fact that there was a massive scandal for the mint in South America that produced all of basically the world's silver for the most part, for at least the
Mhm.
Atlantic world silver. Um, and they were embezzling. They were doing the good old fashioned fucking Shylock special and clipping coins. And you know, not the full value of the coin or whatever. So this is a huge scandal, and it actually it required the entire all of Europe and like all the European colonies to sort of reassess their entire treasury. Um, and in the wake of this, a guy named John Hull, who was a wealthy merchanty type guy in Boston, said, "Hey, I think I could possibly figure out something permanent for us. How about we mint our own coins with a few special features? First of all, it'll say it's a Boston, New England coin. They made a pine tree coin, and then they also made an oak tree coin. But the pine tree coin is the known one. And they did something special, which was they openly clipped it. They
Right.
said, "Hey, this is going to see it's for use within the Massachusetts sphere for 1 shilling, but it's actually worth 90% of a shilling on the open market, like meaning in terms of what the silver was worth."
Mhm.
Um, Now, this was a strategy. It's actually really somewhat ingenious. It was probably never done before, to my
Mm.
knowledge. Although it probably was, but it was not written down that it was done before. Um,
It's too good.
and
You're not supposed to do this every time,
Well,
folks.
they got in a bunch of trouble for this, for the
Yeah.
record.
Yeah.
So they did this, and they said, okay, this is it actually led to nearly a golden age for them, somewhat
Silver
ironically,
Age.
given that it's a silver age. We'll call it a silver age. Why not, folks? um, a silver age for them, and yeah, they fucking kicking ass, making shitloads of money from South America and the Bermudas and stuff, and it leads to a new era of
Mm.
prosperity to them for them. And then the next king came into power after
Games.
Cromwell too, but I think there was another one in between who was cool with
Yeah.
them. But the next guy who came in, he was like, all right, no more
The
fucking
new
around.
boss. The new
Yeah.
boss sucks.
Yeah, he sucks
Yeah.
ass. Um and so what was this was yeah, it was James, right? So he was the Catholic one, right?
Yes.
This is the Catholic one. But so it's interesting because he was, and simultaneously, this James guy he slapped bullshit on them. So first of all, he assigned this guy Edward Andros to be the military slash civil governor of what is now called the New England Dominion, if I'm not mistaken. It had
Mm.
a very fascisty sort of aesthetic almost, where they're like, we're now like I believe in for like overnight it went from like New England being what it is thought of as now to being like all of America. Like everything that was owned by England became New England for a minute, and it
Hmm.
was headquartered in Boston, not just in
Hmm.
Boston, but this Andros guy was generally speaking in New England, and he was a fucking tyrant. He put in all of his buddies. It was cronyism. It's literally what Trump and fucking Elon Musk are doing with the presidency now, where they're just pilfering all the money. They're taking away all the money from the people who were previously getting graft and giving it to all their new buddies.
Yeah.
Or not even graft. I want to give the Puritans let's leave the fucking Trump allegory away
Mm.
aside. But I'll give the Puritans a little shred of credit here. I think particularly this John Hull dude, he fucking went broke doing this. You know,
Yeah.
you think Mr. Gold Moneybags here, fucking Mr. Silver Moneybags here is minting the money is gonna be he's gonna be making good money, but no, he
No.
died fucking penniless doing this experiment in order to sort of save New England.
It's kind of funny because he kind of saw hit. I think it said in the book he saw his money as
New England's money. Yeah.
yeah, like yeah, it was one and the same. So as long as New England was doing well, yeah, and if he felt it necessary, he would move some things around to get things done. Um, but hardly, he hardly ever, came away. He didn't clean up
No,
by
he
any
died
means.
penniless, I think.
Yeah,
I'm not mistaken. I think his family did okay, but he himself was in personal debt at the time of his death, which was in the midst of conflict, mind you. It was like literally Andros was in power still in Boston at the time when he died. And
momentarily
oh yeah, this was
embarrassed
I
power
don't know if I
broker.
said this before, but it's important to say that the reason why this happened was because they minted their own money,
Mm.
which is like a capital. I mean, this is like anyone who's studied anything about medieval or
English.
English common law, yeah. The highest crime, very Jewish, by the way, the highest crime is to make non-sanctioned money. So yeah, they actually honestly got off pretty easy by just having a governor installed. Honestly,
Yeah.
I think in earlier time periods they just all get their hands and heads cut off, be ripped apart by horses, walking different directions or something. Um,
Yeah, but they couldn't get a bunch of guys to go, well, not yet. They couldn't get a bunch of guys to go all the way across the ocean just to do that.
no, that would be a
And
bit much. Yeah,
no,
that'd be a
yeah,
bit rich, as it
yeah.
were.
And then what is he
Um,
gonna do? Just pack up his suitcase and all right, bye guys.
so simultaneously, King James was like King James was Catholic, and so he sought to make alliances with the Massachusetts people because they were not what is known as a nonconformist sect of Christianity within England. And he wanted to be like, yo, we're like friends because we're both not Anglicans, right? This was not cool with the with the Puritans. First of all, they were not cool with that. However, they did entertain him this. They sent over this guy with the best name in history, Increase Mather. His bro's name is Increase.
No. Oh, dude. Uh, What was his name? Thomas Mathers.
Cotton
uh,
Mather, you're thinking
Cotton
of,
Math,
but the top
yeah, Cotton, and then and
increase, like get bigger.
yeah,
Like bro has a
INCREAS.
boner energy for his name. Increase Mather.
That dude, that's such a crazy like 8 Mile ass freaking name.
I know, I know.
That's so backpack rap
I
of
love
them.
it. Yeah,
Very
increase
cool.
Mather. But anyway, he goes to England and goes to chit chat. He goes to rap with fucking Catholic fucking Jim over here, and also to be like, hey, maybe we'll be copacetic with your whole fucking papist bullshit if you let us kick this Andros guy to the curb. Now, meanwhile, this was never going to happen because Andros was like personal buddies, I think, with King Jim. So it was a non-starter, and also he's like some kind of fucking hero. Who gives a shit? He's a fucking pussy. Um, but either way, meanwhile, so he was having this. This is such a crazy confluence of events.
Yeah.
So they were on their way to meet with King James, and they meet with him, right?
Hmm.
Erstwhile, the Cotton Mather, not Increase Mather, Cotton Mather is back in Boston with all the rabble, the veterans of the fucking King Philip's War, with
Hmm.
pitchforks and muskets with bayonets affixed, saying, out ye rascals, essentially, Andros. Get your ass out here. We're taking you to task. Um, and they overthrew him. They had a full on
Yeah.
revolution in 1689.
Yeah.
And there
Kicked him to the
no
curb.
bloodshed, thankfully. But he obviously surrendered. And he did escape, actually, if I'm not mistaken. They snuck him away. They spirited him away on a
Yeah.
ship.
The whole thing reads to me like a very Disney uh series of events. Like a big
Yeah, almost like hyper, maybe semi-real, semi-historical. Yeah.
yeah. The only way this is playing out in my head is like they're carrying him out of the building and there's wacky
He rolled
music
a
playing.
natural 20 and sneak, and he fucking got
Yeah,
out of there,
just
basically.
Amscrade.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is only this is
He
either
went on to be the governor of New Jersey too after this.
no shit. Oh well, yeah, pay for your crimes somehow.
Right, yeah. Well, he
one way
didn't
or
do
another.
anything other than he wasn't supposed to, for the
He was,
record. I
yeah,
mean, yes, the
yeah,
people were mad about it, and yes, they had a rich Republican history, a Republican tradition of free elections and stuff, and he was suddenly an autocrat. And yeah, that's
mhm.
bullshit, but he didn't actually like slay anybody or anything, you know what I mean? Like, and yeah, he
No,
took away, the spoils system of the old guard, I guess, and gave it to his own buddies. But he didn't deserve to have his head cut off. I don't think. Fuck him.
no, no one does.
Fuck
Wish
him.
murder on no man.
But what was I gonna say? So also, meanwhile, while that is going on, so now Increased Mather just went and met with King James, and now he's on his way back. And while he's on his way back, the Glorious Revolution happens. The Glorious Revolution being, of course,
Just
where
missed it.
yeah, which was where King James abdicated peacefully. He went to go
Mm.
live a pastoral life in I don't know where. Oh, Hanover. I remembered. And he and instead King William and Prince and Mary of Orange, Queen Mary. I think she was a princess, and she was like the daughter of the sister. She was the sister of King James, and she ascended to the throne as a crown holding with the king of fucking the Netherlands.
Talk about
He never even learned
entanglement.
English, bro.
That's so funny.
Now, again, you'll probably be saying the English and Dutch aren't that far off. You're right.
Whatever, dude.
It's not crazy. It's not that similar either. But you ever see those tweets in Dutch, and it's just like it sounds like something like Jar Jar Binks said.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um. Yeah. No. The language isn't the problem, really. It's mostly just we gotta fix that accent. You can't. You're not gonna speak English and.
I don't know how they really. That seems like that's the Swedish chef. Yeah, they talk like the Swedish chef. Bork, bork, bork. But
We're gonna get lost in IKEA next time we go
the
there.
Glorious Revolution had more than just this significance. It led to like a new Protestant pietist golden age. Um, and a lot of funding was spent on that. But certainly what it meant is that the Puritans back in Massachusetts Bay were now firmly back in power in light of the new regime change for William and Mary. By the way, William and Mary University, that's where it comes from too, by the way. Um, of Orange. Um, so yeah, so where are we at here? So now we're in the 1700s. The Acadia thing. I have so a bunch of really bad. I don't even want to talk about that stuff. It just sucks. I mean, it's
For the
bad.
record, John Winthrop and the Frenchman, Delaunay, whoever was,
Dolomé, yeah.
yeah, they agreed, after France and England cut off all trade during the war, they agreed to just carry on
Yeah,
like
separate
nothing.
piece.
Yeah, it just goes to show, as soon as the immediate authorities, muskets not
People don't like
pointing directly
fighting.
at you. Yeah, God, and it's the best thing about them. Um,
Um, yeah, so there was a lot of. I think the point of this section of the book was to show that New England sort of had its own sort of pseudo imperial
mm,
aspirations, as it were. Oh yeah, I didn't even
considering,
say this, and I feel sort of silly
mm,
but I guess if you're listening to this right now, you read the description most likely, and you probably would have gotten this from that. But the thesis of the book, I didn't even say, which is very foolish of me. The thesis of this book essentially is that um, many people, I almost want to save this for the end, but no, let's say it now.
I
Many
thought you
people,
were saving
yeah.
it.
Well, yeah,
Um,
fine. I will save it for the end. Yeah, fuck it then. You're right. I didn't. I
eh,
didn't blow my wad yet, folks.
eh,
Keep that.
almost. The another no, actually, go ahead. I'm sorry. I, I got
Oh,
some.
you're right. I think you're right. I think it will be better for dramatic effect. So it's the 1700s. First of all, the first half of it is marred much by like that French stuff. And then eventually this culminates in what is known globally as the 7 Years' War, although it actually lasted longer than 7 years in America, if you can believe it.
Yeah.
But it is in America, and it was taught to me as a child in elementary school as the French and Indian War. Probably best remembered for the Nick Mullen joke. Boy, the French and Indian War. Imagine what that smelled like.
Oh, it probably, yeah, probably smelled like hell. That's probably what hell smells like.
I bet it smelled like leather.
It's-
Leather and gunfire, probably, was my
yeah,
guess.
yeah. Frankly, if we're gonna get literal,
Yeah, we're gonna be autistic about it. Yeah, leather, gunfire, maybe a
um,
little bit of spoilage. Like sort
I,
of shitty jerky and hardtack.
fire, burning wood, and things of that
Well, I
nature.
imagine everything smelled like burning wood then, because that was the
Mm.
only way to get warm, and particularly in New England,
It's funny to think of a whole time in history as being
smelling like something. Yeah, but
we're
I
gonna
mean, prove me wrong here. I'm gonna go with
okay.
Steven Crowder on this.
All right. So what the
Was there
16th
ever a place in settled areas in that time period that didn't
mm.
smell like burning wood?
And even in, the finest castles and such, the
Yeah, you
hearth
smell that
is
shit.
rolling. Yeah. So up until what, the late
20s
19th
at least.
century,
Yeah.
yeah, whatever. What did the 20th century smell like? Interesting question. I said about my own question.
Bitter almonds.
Bitter all the phantom smell of toast you get when you're having a stroke.
Yeah, that. Yeah, something like that. Probably just microplastics, I guess.
Mm. Um,
Um,
so we're getting into they're trying to annex Acadia, all of northern Maine, and
yeah.
trying to muscle that for the crown from the French.
Essentially, yeah, but but
Um,
but sort of in
and
like a weird. I don't know. I want you to keep going, but I just want to say,
mm,
but understand that it's for the crown, but they don't really like the crown. It's more like we could get something out of this, and they did.
it took a while because they had to do it with British troops.
Yes,
Um,
that's true.
yeah, the recruits did not have any intentions on establishing um, uh, settlements that far north. They wanted to go
Why
back to
would you?
where
Yeah, go
things
back to
were.
Massachusetts, dude.
Yeah, things are
It's
fine.
Edenic.
Yeah, just go. Yeah, no, go figure. The 7 Years' War lasted longer here. The amount of time it takes for news to pass in this bullshit time.
True. Yeah.
So yeah, it's very stupid. And I mean, Masserine, another British Frenchman turned Brit,
Well, he was a
who
Huguenot, for the record.
you're right. I'm sorry.
I mean, he was
My
French. So
apologies.
let me just put, for those who don't know, a Huguenot is like the French Puritans, basically.
Hmm.
But they got all kicked out of France.
Hmm.
And a lot of them ended up in English military. The military ones ended up in
Hmm.
English military service. They're like, fuck France, fuck the fucking Catholics.
Hmm. But Paul Masserine
Paul Mascarene, yeah.
ends up with the British, and he was incessant in his idea that he would be able to convert, them from Roman Catholicism. I mean,
Right.
the emphasis being on Jesuit priests, and I think that's the other thing, the difference between how the Catholic Church and the Protestant diaspora. It's in the book. He calls it Protestant International, which is hilarious.
Yeah.
The Protestant
Or the
International.
Protestant Atlantic, too.
There you go. They all sound like they.
Atlantis, yeah.
Oh, jeez. But the way that they
Interesting too,
evangelized,
because it is like they did kind of like explicitly be like, we're like Atlantis.
yeah,
Didn't they?
no,
Didn't they say shit like that too? They're like, we're basically
they
like
love
making our own Atlantis.
they love
Theopolis
mixing.
Americana.
There you go. Yeah, they love mixing metaphors. They love the Greek myths. They love the uh the uh the
The
biblical
Bible. Yeah.
justification. However it'll suit them because we're talking Protestantism here.
Yeah.
And there is, the one thing you can say about the Catholic incursion into wherever is they initially just send a few priests to be killed, a few at a time, and
Right. Yeah,
which
true.
is a much more that's a better understanding of what the Bible is
Yeah.
teaching.
I mean, it is the contiguous church that existed since then, since Bible
And
times, just about.
and they are sending earnest, faithful men to whatever degree. Uh, you can get into the guys who are, in the back office back in,
Sure, the
Portugal.
Jesuits, yeah. It was
Yeah,
usually Jesuits that we're talking about, yeah.
specifically in Acadia too. But these guys were earnest, and many of them, let's not forget Japan, uh, died. Um, you know, and
China too. There's a couple of
there you go.
Jesuits who we followed in those China episodes me and William did, yeah.
So, I mean, tens of thousands of Christians in Japan killed. I thought that was a ridiculous number, but I couldn't find anything less than that. It was always in that range. Um, I was gonna make a joke on the Tokyo riot episode. I forgot. And it's
Oh,
so
yeah.
stupid. Where I was gonna say, Scott, tens of thousands of people died. And you'd say, no, 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 they didn't. Two people got hurt. I'd say, oh, that was the Japanese genocide Christians
Yeah.
for several centuries. But the the idea that and Masserine actually like in letters was trying to convert a Catholic priest like to his face. My,
Yeah.
and yeah, not per se, but so these guys have
Like
a
literally, you
they're
mean.
very maybe not literally, but yeah, that's about as in your face as someone can get. Like um but it just speaks to the how bold these gentlemen are, and
Yeah, no,
their
I will say this is
entitlement.
that guy seemed like extra stupid, and also I mean like he was like a military. Like I want to make sure that like the guys, people like Samuel Sewell
Mm,
and like Cotton Mather, I would say are probably the people who grokked like the Protestant religion or like the Puritan religion the best. And people like Paul Mascarene were not. They were that was a soldier who like was a zealot essentially.
mm. And just loved playing soldier because he did it
Yeah.
for the French and he did it for the British, and but uh, Cotton Mather, y'all ever do anything about the witch trials? Because if we're in New England, dude, we
We
had
did one on we did one on
yeah,
the witch trials, yeah. Was
uh,
Cotton Mather was something what he was like a theological expert. I believe somebody who the fuck was it that I was saying that it was he was like the guy who said, "Hey guys, maybe we shouldn't kill these people." He ended up being like something of a figure in this maybe it's Josiah Quincy or something.
mm,
No, that would have been too late.
mm.
Who is the guy that I had him on my fucking. But regardless, so is Cotton Mather everything to do with the witch trials? I didn't know that.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he was the one of the main
Oh, this is who we're talking about, Cotton Mather. Yes, he was the one who said, "Guys, maybe we shouldn't kill them."
uh I mean in how you say in the common lexicon now he's known as this what do you say some kind of maniac uh you know some uh, zealot who I don't know, the witch
Well, that was
trials thing
William
is so
Stoughton. That was
crazy.
William Stoughton, though. William Stoughton, the namesake of fucking Stoughton,
There you
Massachusetts,
go.
mind you,
Yeah.
was the megalomaniac psycho who
Yeah.
wanted to kill all of them. It says right here, I'm on with a Wikipedia page for Cotton
Hmm.
Mather. Unlike some other ministers, Cotton Mather never called for an end to the trials, and he afterwards wrote New England's official defense of the court's proceedings. Oh, wait a minute. So he did actually say
Yeah.
this is hardcore. Yeah.
Yeah, no, the way I heard
Oh,
about
maybe I
him
was thinking of
prior
the
to
other guy.
I,
Yes.
I want to find this other guy. Folks, we're learning in real time here all
We
together.
literally are. Yeah.
I was gonna look it up here. Who
Also,
spoke up?
Cotton Mather was like a full alchemist. Like he was all into this kooky stuff too. Anyway, by the way, we're gonna go check out his books.
Yes, we are going to be doing a History Homos on location. at the Cotton Mather
I don't know that they'll let us
Library.
record or anything, but
They, we'll see what we can do. Um, um, but all that aside, the witch trials is such a crazy thing because there's a lot that goes in, there's a lot of pop revisionism about it.
sure.
Um, in whatever slant you want, but something one thing that I always found amusing or whatever, how it's not amusing, it's sucks, is that a lot of these young women, to whatever degree, and there are a few men too, who were accused and condemned in whatever fashion. There were a lot of different ways.
Some of them
Um,
weren't actually killed. Yeah.
yeah, some of them exiled and so on, but um, I'm sure if there was at least one earnest one. I be
Yeah. I actually, I believe my take. We did a
Please.
Salem witch trials episode, and I believe our
Did
take
we
on it
do it?
was
Because I'm losing my
no.
mind now.
Me
Okay,
and William
good.
did it. I'm
All right,
positive.
good. Because I thought we did and I lost my mind.
No, 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 no.
Okay.
But our take on it was basically it seemed like it was like a land thing. And it was like the family that were accused of being witches were the one family in town who weren't allowing this prominent family in town to become the priest of the town. So as I mentioned before, these are
Yeah.
Calvinists, so they voted on who would be the preacher of the town or
Hmm.
the whatever. And
Hmm.
this guy came to town and he was like, "I'm going to be which meant they all had to pay him." And he was going to be able to live on the fucking dole essentially, and
Yeah.
everyone in town was like, yeah, sure, this guy seems good. And this one family said, no, fuck that. We're the fucking family who does that.
We're
Guess
gonna
who
accuse
guess who are the witches?
and that's my thing is
Yeah. That is what
I
happened, dude. I'm fucking convinced of it. That's what happened. Yeah.
I'm certain that however many of the actual accused were earnest or, maybe even what would you say? So I think a lot of them were getting accidentally dosed with LSD because
Yeah, they
some,
say that it's like they ate
yeah.
the wheat that had turned or whatever, and it has
So,
LSA actually in it.
not to get scandalous or nothing, but there's also the thing with the witch's broom. If there's one thing if you thought you could leave a woman alone with, it was a broom, but um, the idea of a witch riding a broom and these and then these women who are working with a broom that's finished with well, I forget it's some kind of lacquer polish or
Oh, right, the
something.
polish it has some sort of
Mm,
hallucinogenic
and there's a
like
mold in
mercury or
it.
something, yeah.
No, it's a
Ergot.
there we go, ergot poisoning, and they probably
Yeah, there's
started whacked
LSA.
out.
It's like the ingredient of that they grew LSD eventually out of, but it has
No,
naturally occurring LSA, a lysergic acid,
tell
acetic
me,
something or
tell
other.
me someone hadn't figured that out already. You know?
That is a common thing.
Yeah.
I tend to go with the conspiracy angle myself, and that stuff's fun. I like playing around with that. Possibly it resulted in some other thing, but I gotta tell you, I think that was a con job in order to get the land and the money, and it was all that kind of bad fallen world stuff.
Mhm.
If you know what I mean.
Hmm.
Meaning
Oh
it was
yeah.
where it was earthly. I'm saying.
Sure, sure. Yeah. No. And it just the motivations would have could very well could have all been perfectly fiscal, but it's probably they probably showed their hand a little bit with the hysteria it caused because
Yeah.
as we're talking about, all these guys, they are very, very keen on other literature other than the good book, and
Yeah, so
they
we're
fancy
gonna get to the
themselves.
bottom of this. Wait, so mind
Yeah.
you that this
Yeah.
is the largest grouping of the Cotton of the Mather Library.
Hmm.
In its entirety, it is now lost to history. There's pieces
Sure.
of it all over the place. I'm sure all the scandalous stuff is not there. However, we are going to go look at it. It is at the American Antiquarian Society in Worcester, Massachusetts. And we're going to go there and check out the books. So we'll
Brother,
You're gonna have an episode on that in the future.
yeah, all the all the scandalous shit is not there, but
Yeah, they don't have fucking Necronomicon or whatever the fuck.
yeah,
But
his
I think you're
personal
right.
copy.
I think you're right. To say all that, to say to sort of sum up this entire little segment here. I think the reason why Cotton Mather had a big bug up his ass about the whole witchcraft thing is because he was pretty familiar with it.
Mm, yeah,
But
yeah.
we'll never know. That's the other thing. So
Uh,
regardless, Cotton Mather though,
Talking
that's
about places named for dickheads, Stoughton. How about Randolph? Mr. Running Fib. Mr. Go Back to the
was that him?
Queen
I'm
and
pretty sure that
King.
was not actually
It
named after
was.
him. Oh, it was.
Oh,
You looked it up?
no, no, I didn't look it up. I
Let's
assumed
look up
it.
the town.
I'm
I
sorry.
assumed it at first too, but I think I went and checked and it's like a different Randolph. But I'm gonna
Listen,
check.
I'm sorry, folks. I want to apologize. I did that. I failed in my
No, it's
duties.
okay. It was Peyton Randolph. And no, it was not because he was a founding
The
father, the first president of the Continental Congress. So a totally different
okay.
era.
I misspoke, and I will go into
It's
the
okay.
future with my History
I think
Homos
you're thinking of
mug.
Edmund Randolph, if I'm not mistaken. Did you
Yes,
get a History Homos mug made?
my lady made this for me. My wonderful woman. She made this. I don't want. Yeah,
And you're just
yeah.
showing it off now? It's oh, wow, he's got a mug with our
It's
faces on
very
it. Hey,
yeah.
talk so it
It's
shows
very
you.
cute. It's very cute, folks. It's the first episode that I did here. The homos. That's our silly photo. But yeah, it's yeah, happy to be here. Flinging out misinformation
You know what?
like
That's
it's
okay.
five
That's
cent
okay.
pieces.
Hey, we corrected the record, didn't we?
We're learning in real time, folks.
But no, now Randolph is known for
Dickheads.
Haitians.
Oh, hey, I wouldn't want to be there either, man. I'll be honest.
Um,
Uh,
yeah, it is what it is. But okay, so we got to talk a little bit more about we got to talk a little bit more about Cotton Mather here because Cotton Mather was a something of an international science. He was the Neil deGrasse Tyson of his time, as it were. Um,
he had a vest with stars and shit on it,
yeah,
and
he touched a girl's dress and showed her where Pluto was or whatever.
that's one guy I don't think was ever invited to any parties.
Yeah, he seems very lame.
Sorry.
He kisses his own reflection in a mirror.
Yeah, God, don't get me started. Shout outs to my father who can't stand Neil deGrasse Tyson, and we're here right now dogging on him. He's not coming on the show, and that's fine.
It's okay. I think it's somewhat universal to hate him, unless
That
you're like
that,
really
that
lame.
Universal, that's pretty apt. We'll leave it at
Yeah,
that.
I know.
There you go.
It was intended. It was
Very
intended.
funny. This man's good.
But what's it called? Yeah. So Cotton Mather, though, he was like, he very. So this is really an important thing too, is that like he very much and it wasn't just him, but he's sort of the avatar of this notion. Was this idea that Massachusetts and Boston were, they were like um a city that was spoken of in the same breath as Vienna or
Mm,
London
mm.
or Rome or Paris or
Whoa, whoa,
something.
whoa. I mean, hey, slow
I meant like
down.
in terms of culture, but
Yeah, no, of course.
or Venice then fine, Venice
Sure. Oh no, I just mean like they really had aspirations.
for sure. Yeah, and they
Yeah.
wanted to
They
do
met
that.
them.
They did meet them. Yeah, yeah, and it is it must be said that they did contribute to the international sort of pursuit of science, which is very tightly bound up. Very, I got to tell you, this whole like pietist Protestant milieu is like it really it shows me where we'd end up, I guess, with this sort of like ever progressing march of progress
Mm,
and science, and the fact that this idea that there's a religious angle to science pursuit. It reminds me a lot of like the scientism, as it were, and also the idea that social equality is also tied up together. Very reminiscent of what the religion in Massachusetts is today, which is
yeah,
libtard. Um,
fantastic.
But
Yeah.
what was I gonna say? Is so yeah, do I want to cover the stuff about they experimented with paper money. That was stupid. It didn't work. What else did they talk about? So yeah, oh yeah, the French and Indian War, the Acadia stuff. Well, that led to the Revolutionary War, of course. And it led
Deliver
to My
me.
New Literally Me, which is I like John Ad. I low key like John Adams because so here's this thing that the book presented to me, which I didn't even realize was something that I'd onboarded from my youth, being educated.
Mm,
Um, this idea that the Constitution, the American Constitution, was conceived of in a sort of existential struggle between two parties. This was how it was taught to me as a young man. And it
mm,
was sort of the Alexander Hamilton Madison wing, and then
mm.
also the Thomas Jefferson wing. Now, this was like the two sort of
Yeah.
this is the dialectical struggle between the two branches of the American whatever.
Mm.
Um and the I'm sorry, I gotta pull up this window again. There we go. Um and now the book is here to say no, no. One fella from Braintree, Massachusetts, John Adams, he had his own ideas about how America should be run, and his ideas were not considered,
Mm.
strictly speaking, because he was away, being like the American diplomat to like the Dutch and the French and the blah 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 blah, and this like him being not present during all these important things meant that he did not really have a say in the constitutional drafting. So, and I think I gotta say, I think I got an inkling from our author here that he might be a literally John Adams, literally me enjoyer as well, because he sort of rued the idea that this was not considered because he sort of showed the incident of okay, well, let's just skip over, and I think the book does this too to good effect, which is he sort of just skips over the Revolutionary War.
To a degree. You know what I thought was great was the way that he establishes just how fed up the city state of Boston might be with, I mean, we're
With the
talking,
taxes and stuff, yeah.
oh, I mean, the impressment. There was a 3-day riot
Right.
in 1747 when the British were trying to impress Boston sailors into the Navy.
Yeah.
And so, and 200, they sent 2,000 some volunteers to Guantanamo Bay trying to
Literally Guantanamo Bay.
literally, yeah. And that's where what 90% of them died. Two,
Yeah.
200 came back.
Yeah.
Um, uh,
And this was a boondoggle
and
and
then
part of like the War of Spanish Succession or some bullshit.
right here, the following year, the Treaty of something stupid in French returned Louisburg to France in exchange for French concessions of territory in Netherlands, bringing yet another moment of dissolution. The common belief among Bostonians, the British Empire were insane, blah blah. Imagine that, all that, the suffering, all the pain, all that, just for it to be over across the ocean, and it take another 3 months for you to find out.
It's
It,
it's it's
it's
maddening. It's maddening. And then on top of
yeah.
that was this idea that they had 200 years nearly, not 200 years, 100 years now of history of being the masters of their own command, masters of their
Mm,
domain,
hmm.
and to this extent that they literally had a fucking armed insurrection and
Yeah.
kicked the fucking British out of here already once. So this
Yeah.
it's inane, this idea that they would be yoked like this. So
Absolutely.
yeah, and I think you're right. He does set a good stage for that. Now again, and I think, and we'll come to at the very end of
Mm,
the episode, we'll come to sort of the summation of this entire thing, and we'll talk about why. But I think the author is very smart in sort of skipping over like the specifics of this well trod territory that I'm sure if you're an American at least you know this shit.
mm.
With the
You may not know this. This is something I don't want to skip over. This is that thing I mentioned earlier about George Washington. Uh, but he might not
buying
have
his
known it.
election.
Yeah, 1754 events in the Ohio Valley beyond the influence of officials in Whitehall or Versailles turned these agreements upside down. A lost and confused detachment of Virginia militia led by their 22-year-old Lieutenant Colonel George
Right.
Washington stumbled on a French patrol in the woods of western Pennsylvania. The ensuing massacre of the French commander, Joseph Coulon de Jumonville, and a number of his men by the frightened Virginians touched and their Indian allies touched off a global war. So, uh, I mean, we have the following, that that's too fucking funny.
Oh, so he was
Just
like sort of the first shot in this in the fucking
in
what was that,
this,
the War of the Spanish Succession or whatever, or
this is just
the French and
after,
Indian War.
this is just after they'd made peace, and uh, uh, yes, right at 7 Years' War,
The
1753.
French and Indian War, yeah.
Yeah, so it's annoying that he doesn't call it the French and Indian War because that's all I've ever known.
Well,
Um,
I mean, it's smart because that's not what anybody else knows it as except us in fucking Massachusetts elementary school history class. Other than that,
Fair
it's
enough.
fucking but yeah, I mean, it's actually one of those wars where it has like literally like 20 different names depending on where you're from. Um, it's like
Yeah, but
it's also known as the War of the Austrian Succession, believe it or not, too, because that's what it was all about. At the end of the day, was the War of the I was the Austrian Succession. It was like which dynasty of fucking interrelated fucking crown. It's
mhm.
crazy. It's crazy that people
It's
die
all
for this. It's really absurd.
that, yeah, that's what pisses me off, dude. And yeah, I mean, it just is. I mean, I'm being silly, but the fact that the first break in the treaty after that was George Washington and a gang of buffoons just happened to accidentally kill.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but yeah, no, yeah, we get into William Shirley, Mr. What's his face, the first what governor? No, not the first,
I
but
think we can just skip ahead a bit here. I want to talk
yeah,
about move on to John Adams and like and the idea of government from the Massachusetts
sure.
perspective and where they sort of collided with the national scene. So
Hmm.
basically, Massachusetts had this idea of, a bicameral meaning two houses of parliament, as it were, and they would check each other. And then there was this sort of idea from the Jeffersonian wing where it's like, no, we'll have direct democracy, and the people who are in charge of the government will accurately, like he was like, we're gonna have Hitler now, like representative Hitlerism, and they're gonna have the right ideas and the right spirit of what they should be up to immediately, instinctively. He's like, I trust these people. Meanwhile, as soon as he became president, he literally broke all constitutional precedent to buy this huge swath of land so he could help the French because he liked what they were doing. And then also, you persecuted fucking Aaron Burr because he didn't like him. And it's
Well,
like,
like,
yeah, Mr. fucking Liberty is a fucking cunt. Fuck Jefferson and fuck him in his fucking race mixing ass.
what's he say here? He says he says of himself he is awkward in dress and awkward in
Who,
stance or
Jeff? T Jeff?
yeah, awkward in figure, awkward in dress, no abilities, a perfect bigot, and fanatic. I thought of you.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah. But
Uh,
he again, I talked about this last episode, but or a couple episodes ago maybe, but they he had this like kooky Freemason version of the Bible where he's like, yeah, I don't like any of that God stuff, but you
oh
know,
yeah,
that's literally that he wrote his own version of the Bible where he just cut out all the supernatural things at
we're, t
all and
we're
just was
not
like,
talking
yeah,
about
Jesus was a guy who was nice. The
yeah.
end.
Okay, that story is not as
Not as impactful, but he was a
hmm,
weird Freemason, so that's why. But
go figure.
regardless,
There's
let's move on though. But let's real quick. I just want to hone in here. So John Adams had a
mhm,
major hand in writing the Massachusetts Constitution, which was
mhm.
different in important ways than the national Constitution. Um, and one of which was that they had yearly popular. First of all, the executive branch of Massachusetts was exceptionally strong and could overturn much of what the other branches wanted. And to put a further popular spin on that, they would have frequent elections. So you may have heard of I know you did, we talked about it before, but listeners, you may have heard of the Shays Rebellion, which was after the American Revolution. Massachusetts actually was extra burdened with war debts because that's where a lot of the fighting, the origin of it all started. Um, and so the people who got in afterwards were aristocrats, just through no, it was due to structural reasons, but primarily due to like, luck, really. It was just like what ended up happening essentially. And you'll see why I say that in a moment. And in doing so, they were like, yeah, we have plenty of cash. We're going to need to repay this debt quickly. So what we'll do is we'll make everyone in Massachusetts pay X amount. And if you don't have cash, fuck you. And we'll take your fucking land. And now this was a huge problem because even so very wealthy people out from like Worcester or Springfield or just outside in Massachusetts, they didn't carry cash because what do you need cash for? I just sell fucking grain to all the
Mhm.
poor fucking farmer people and I just
Mhm.
spend whatever cash I have and I do bartery stuff.
Mhm.
Very Christian, by the way.
Mhm.
Not to need the money, just be like a productive, well-respected member of of society.
Hey,
Now,
hey, your wife makes those cakes? Yeah, whenever. Yeah.
yeah.
Bring one
Anyway,
by.
these people in Boston, they were sort of insulated from this, and they said, "Well, fuck them. We're going to take their land." Blah 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 blah. And there was an armed insurrection over it. Again, Massachusetts again has this real streak of independence. Now, what did the Massachusetts legislature do? They hired mercenaries to squash the rebellion in a short time. Now, interestingly, the beauty of the Adams designed Constitution of Massachusetts was elections came, and guess who got elected? Figures within the Shays Rebellion were elected, and they walked back the part about taking the land away. And what do you know? Democracy in action.
Mm. Hey, what do you want,
Now,
folks?
the
Um,
issue here.
I would just
Go ahead.
I
Yeah,
just want to say, Adams, he wrote these letters anonymously called the Novangelus letters.
yeah.
He was the first sovereign citizen, Scott,
I
because
know. That's why I like him.
to the inhabitants of the colony of Massachusetts Bay,
He's
he's
pedantic about the wording. Yeah.
yeah, no, he really is, I guess,
He's
one
making
of
a
the
legal case. I mean, remind you that he is a lawyer, was a
hmm
lawyer. And yeah, he made the case, the legal case, that given that Massachusetts was always a colony and not a province, as say Scotland or Northern Ireland or England or Wales is considered a province of the United Kingdom, if I'm not
hmm
mistaken. English can correct me on that. Um, Therefore, they are not in what's the word? They're not beholden to the parliament, who are the ones who are always bugging them and putting the tax stamp act and the
hmm
intolerable acts or whatever. Um,
I
and he
mean,
said, yes, go ahead.
and if I may, can also understand their sense of entitlement to this land because they're the ones that worked it
Yes,
with hardly any
very
help.
libertarian.
Yeah, they with hardly any help. Whatever
Yeah,
shit they got support from uh across the Atlantic, it was nothing to what these people suffered.
yeah.
So, yeah, they're not beholden to this, yeah.
It's absurd. It's actually absurd that they would do that. But what was I gonna say? So he made the legal case though that given that they only have to just say that we're subjects of England essentially, and the king is our sovereign,
Mm.
and Parliament can go suck rocks.
Yeah, absolutely.
Um,
Get in line, all of you.
but anyway, so this is the issue though. So the as you probably guessed, on the national stage, a bicameral, um, legislature was erected. We currently live under a bicameral legislature.
Hmm.
However, there's some major problems with it. Number one being the three-fifths rule, which is immediately implemented. And this
Hmm.
was immediately implemented by the majority. The majority of these colonies, mind you, are slave owners,
Hmm.
slave holding. And therefore they had an outsized voice within the continental and then later in the American Congress. Um, and It's interesting too because there was the Massachusetts passed ratifying the Constitution by a minuscule margin. And also another thing is, fucking Rhode Island almost saved our asses. Rhode Island was the last people to go in. If you remember, this was in the Alexander Hamilton Jewish book.
Yes, yeah.
Is that the Jews convinced them to join because there was a bunch of Jews in Rhode Island and they wanted the assurance that they'd get the freedom of religion that was promised being a part of
Hmm.
the Constitution. So if
Good
not for
pick.
them, we could have had the Articles of Confederacy forever and we would have had a utopia. I'm kidding. We're not really having a utopia,
Oh,
but
it's a
I
mess.
don't know. There's an argument to be made there, though, is that the Articles of Confederacy was better. And the other thing we forgot to mention too is
I'd
important.
love to
John
have that.
Adams said the government basically he's a Tenth Amendment bro. He's a Tenth Amendment bro. Basically,
Yeah.
he's like the government should do five things: trade, international, war and defense, disputes between the states, taxes, meaning tariffs.
Hmm.
And actually, I think that's four. I think there's four things. There's nothing else.
It's, yeah. Yeah. Well, that's your mistake, is it will never,
Yeah,
you'll
I know.
die. You'll die, and some other guy will come in with a different idea. And
Exactly.
this thing is shifting.
It's cooked.
Um,
But what I was gonna say is, so
so
yeah, the issue though is that the slave, and he wrote about this extensively during his lifetime, is that we don't need to be hooked up with these fucking slave owner guys. Not only do he like, I think maybe him and maybe some other people went down to the South at some point during their travels, and they said like they say they have a representative democracy, but who are they representing? The
mm,
people who are the interests of the people that are being represented in the representative government are the representatives. Like it's the 12 guys
yeah,
who run the state and they
yeah,
own gazillion slaves
cool.
who are the fucking representatives,
Yeah,
and
get
all
to
they
them
ever
and
do is make stuff easier and better for cotton selling slave owners. They don't ever
mhm,
do, like he goes, the rich cultural history of Massachusetts and its yeoman culture is bereft. There is none in the South.
mm,
And you're basically shit on the fucking rich man's shoe if you're a free white man in the South.
mm,
And yeah, this is like flies right in the face of the Puritan and just the New England spirit. Because I don't know that Adams was a Puritan. I don't think he was, in fact. He might have been an Anglican even. But certainly probably a more strict Protestant, but I don't think he was like a fucking Winthrop guy.
no, no. At that time, the protesters believed that a corrupt cabal of conspirators, in league with the king's ministers and their lackeys in Parliament, were seeking to create lordships over the small landowners of rural Massachusetts.
Was
Thought
the
that was,
Shays Rebellion?
yeah, thought that was an amusing aside. Well, of course, what do you mean?
Yeah, they do. People do be loving conspiracies, though.
Yeah, well, as it
It's,
turns out,
as it turns out,
um,
they often happen. But so he talks about this eternal yoke of being attached at the hip to, immediately, again, I think he was, like, oh, I wasn't even in America at the time, but
no.
he came back and found out, oh, the Constitution's a thing.
Oh,
And
okay.
he ended up becoming president, as it were. And history sort of remembers him as being like a, like an affirmer of the Constitution because he became president. But
Mm,
like in his private
no.
correspondence, it doesn't seem that way. It seems like he was like probably a more into the Articles of Confederacy type thing, and sort of and more importantly, Massachusetts being able to sort of self-determine its future without considering the needs and wants of the slaveholding South.
Mhm.
Um, and yeah, so that becomes a major point of contention. And I don't want to spend too much time on this because who wants to hear about slavery and the Civil War anymore? I'm sick of it, folks.
Yeah.
Um,
I dread the consequences of this dissimilitude of character.
yeah, oh yeah, I dread the consequences is a great fucking quote,
What
by
a
the way.
what a refrain. That's
I
just
dread the quant. That's a new Giga Chad
yeah.
meme. I dread the consequences.
I dread the consequences. Yeah, just
But
yeah. Um, hey, your phone's ringing in the other room. I dread the consequence. Um, yeah, so
you left the oven on.
I'm
I dread the
four
consequences.
I'm 4 hours north in Acadia National Park. Uh, yeah, no, I just keep flying past highlighted sections of the book that are I dread the consequences the many times he says it. It's
He does say it, yeah, a few times, yeah.
uh
But yeah, so we'll talk quickly about the War of 1812 too, which was basically the South fucked over Massachusetts, nearly specifically, because they were a totally mercantile society, and the Madison faction, who was in the presidency at the time, said, "How are we going to deal with this War of 1812 thing?" And they said, "We're just going to stop trading with everybody. So fuck you, Massachusetts." And
oh
there was a moment there where the Massachusetts and actually New England in general, they met in Hartford, Connecticut, and drafted up articles of secession, essentially, what
yeah,
tantamounts to it, yeah.
yeah.
And but when they arrived in Washington D.C., the war was over. And they looked stupid because they were like, "Yeah, what are you complaining about?" And imagine also it
Yeah.
took like months to get there, probably, and it's like,
As you,
God damn it.
as per usual. Yeah. Oh great. Now 600,000 people are dead and many more displaced and disoriented.
That was the Civil War.
Oh,
That's
I'm sorry.
whatever
I'm
you want
sorry.
to. War of 1812, I think, was not too bad.
Oh, okay. I thought
It
we
wasn't
jumped way.
good. I'm not gonna pretend it's good, but it
I thought
wasn't
we were
like,
jumping way ahead.
no,
Okay.
not
All
that
right. We're
far.
still
But
there.
let's quickly do the Civil War too. Um, so anyway, this the South secedes, as you many know, and it kind of puts Massachusetts in this weird spot. Oh, this other thing I wanted to talk about too is Lowell Mills and the yeah, the Lowell whole experiment there.
Yeah.
Bro
Which
went to Scotland and just like used his eyes to steal the idea of how to make water water
turbine,
turbines
yeah,
for mills, yeah.
everything. Yeah. Brilliant,
And
really, because they
came
were running a
back and just
lot.
said, "Okay, let's get to work, boys." And
Yeah.
built this massive complex of you can still go, they're still there, by the way. As a teenager, when I was in like late middle school, I went to Lowell Mills and took a tour, and it's really depressing, I gotta tell you, to see how these people lived. But
Liminal space.
yeah,
And yeah.
that was a liminal space.
Yeah.
Um,
So you go in there, you go, hey, Mr. Lowell, what's all this stuff? Oh, that's cotton, son. Where do you get it?
right. Well,
You know?
that's your point. That's a good
Yeah.
point, is because so after the or
The
in sort of
entanglements.
the run up of the Civil War, or actually I said after the War of 1812,
Hmm.
where they were like, "Oh fuck, our shipments are all fucked by this war that we got dragged into. We had nothing to do with because the fucking South had wanted to run their mouths." Not really. I'm kidding. That's not really what happened. But
We love the
um,
South. We love our Southern listeners.
I love everybody. But
Amen.
what's it called?
Um,
We got dragged into this bullshit. We didn't like it. Whatever. So I get an idea. Fine. We'll shift our whole business model. We'll actually sell to the interior of America clothes made here right in Massachusetts. And where are we going to get the cotton for that? Well, slavery. So in their attempt to sort of wriggle out of the grasp of the South, or their geopolitical effect that the South had on them, they
Mhm.
now codependent on the South to
Mhm.
create the economic conditions for the entire country. Now, mind
Mhm.
you, um, do you think this trade stopped during the Civil War? It kept going. This isn't in the book, but I happen to know that they continue. And what a fuck, why did they think this was, I don't know, whatever. I'm not getting into the whole Civil War thing. I'm done with it. I'm over it. But
It's in the past.
yeah, my point is, it's just like, it's just, the whole thing is, it's insane. Why did you guys fight over secession? I mean, especially given it's really ludicrous, because like there's, like, he even talks about in the book, like, about how like Massachusetts was like, fuck slavery, we want to get out of this arrangement, it's not good for us anymore, or
Mhm.
whatever. And then suddenly the South leaves, and then the North is like, get back here. It's like, wait a minute. Like,
Yeah.
well,
It,
we know the reality is that has nothing to do with what the sentiment of what people thought. Obviously, it was about
mm,
power and railroads and all this other fucking federal power and money and stuff like that, and banks and all that happy horse shit.
yeah. Unfortunately, yeah, cost hundreds of thousands of people.
Yeah.
What a fucking waste. Yeah, I don't, yeah, it makes me miserable.
Yeah, let's
Every,
not even talk about it. But my
uh,
point, yeah, go ahead.
yeah, I mean, up until that point, yeah, the book takes some detours. We're in Germany, we're in Greece. Folks, please refer to the Greek Revolution
Right.
episode.
Well, yeah. So after the Civil War, of course, or no, it was before the Civil
F,
War.
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, we're talking
20s.
1820 to 40 now-ish period.
Um, yeah, we do have an episode in the previous. Me and William did an episode of the Greek Civil War, and yeah, the Boston was a major player in supplying troops and money for the support of the Greek revolutionaries, because they had this sort of again, it's really in the same tradition of like taking the Enlightenment to its final conclusion, where
Right.
like they like really venerate the ancient Greeks as being like the cradle of civilization and the cradle of democracy, which is like the highest political expression of their theology. So
Mhm.
they have this sort of this amity that they want to cultivate between the two cultures. And
Mhm.
it's also was they sort of led there by this like sort of transcendentalist pietist German movement,
Mhm.
with like Goethe and stuff. Um,
Pick the
but yeah, really all I want to say about that is that it just things got really weird with Protestantism in that time period.
Yeah, I mean the Carl Folan, um,
Fallen, yeah.
Fallen, yeah, occasional member of the Transcendental Club, first German instructor, then professor at
He was
Harvard.
like a 48er.
What's
The 40
for
oh
for the
the
folks at
48ers
home
the
and
48ers
me?
were like this was like a German revolutionary group that arose out of like the mostly Jewish, but also Jewish and like this kind of Protestant out of the universities.
Mm,
And they wanted to have a republic over all of Germany, like a what would be later like the Otto von Bismarck German
hmm
republic-ish empire, but they wanted to
hmm
force it with like almost French Revolution style rhetoric almost. You
hmm
get what I'm
Oh
saying?
yeah,
Like
absolutely.
real radical Unitarian. Like, but when I say Unitarian, I mean like Ralph Waldo Emerson, crazy fucking like kooky like liberation theology
Yeah.
stuff.
What did he say? When the Fugitive Slave Act passed, um, I'll find it here. Folks, just think of the cringiest tweet you can think of, and that's what he said.
He
That's
said
it.
"yikes" at the beginning of it.
Yikes. So stupid. Oh man, shit. But yeah, and just out of the mouth of Carl Fallon himself, I mean, it's a lot of really vengeful talk. It's it's very much a precursor to Nietzsche, really.
Yeah, oh, definitely,
It's
definitely, definitely. Kant was from the school. Kant rose out of the school, I would say.
makes sense.
Hegel was like definitely majorly influential on this. Yeah, 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 yeah. Big time, big time. It would eventually culminate in Nietzsche. Yeah, for sure, for sure. For better or
Mhm.
for worse, I think Nietzsche honed in on a lot of shit that these guys got wrong, actually. To be honest.
Yeah, they got plenty wrong.
Yeah. But regardless, I don't want to spend too much time on this, but the point
Sure,
is
sure.
that this was like a major, like what we see in today's libtardism arose out of this sort of intercourse between German idealism,
Hmm.
and the Kant and these 48ers and their sort of counterparts in Harvard. Honestly, this guy, like, what was it, Tickver or Tickner?
Ticker,
Tickner.
Tickford,
Yeah,
right?
whatever the
Uh,
fuck. But yeah, he was like the theology professor at Harvard Divinity School in Harvard, and yeah, this he was very instrumental in like this sort of intercourse. It's Atlantic intercourse of
Tickner, I'm
ideas that
sorry.
were really Horace Mann was a result of this. Horace Mann, very well known in not just Massachusetts, but all of America for being the father of the American education system. Boo. Not even
Suck an
boo.
egg.
Back then, it was probably great. The problem
Uh,
is that they were like, no, we want to do this forever
I
and
think
make
the
kids
pro
into.
sorry. I think the problem came when 1875, something to that effect, was when Massachusetts soldiers were actually went house to house, door to door, and said, "Your kid's
Force
going
them
to
to you're going
school."
to school. Yeah.
Yeah, if I'm remembering correctly, but yeah, no, that's a misery. But yeah, as opposed to this dickhead, I'll read this quote in two parts from Carl Fallen and his German whatever the school of thought is, someone with more for
Idealism.
yeah, yeah. Um, no man can demand of another that he recognize any higher law than his own free conviction. Where the ethical, oh yeah, for fallen, close, yeah, uh, end
Close
quote.
quotation.
Yeah, for fallen, the pursuit of the good and the true could justify violence. Open quote. Where the ethical necessity exists, all means are permitted for those who are convinced of this necessity, and if necessary, those who have an opinion which varies must be sacrificed. I don't like that kind of talk. That's a lot of
Yeah.
tough talk. Yeah,
It was very zealotous. Yeah.
yeah. Get out of my face with that shit.
Yeah, also
Um,
this was the school of people who came up with phrenology though. So and it had to do with like the Calvinist sort of like grounding where it's like yeah, people are like fucked to begin with and like some people just aren't meant to be to see the light kind of thing. And they actually sciencized this by being like, yeah, we can even tell by poking around your fucking noggin.
which um they the head kind of got uh centralized after a point, but it was a whole like a body thing, like your liver's out of place or something.
Hmm.
Like they did believe that there was there was something wrong with your body that made you act this way, so we're just gonna shake you a
Well,
little bit.
and again, I think the book does a pretty good job of saying like, listen, maybe they weren't right exactly about the the bumps meaning
And
that much, but it
that's
was a
not why you're a
major
drunk.
step. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
obviously,
there's a
but
bunch not you. Jeez, Scott.
yeah, yeah.
Sorry.
Well, I think I'm doing okay. What's it called? What's it called? But the fact is, in the book says this too. By the way, is it's like it was a huge step for them to be like, oh, there's something physically wrong with you that's causing this, as opposed to being like, there's demons in your head.
Let's dunk them. Dunk them in
Yeah.
the dunk them in the Watuppa Pond or whatever.
Let's call the exorcist. This will sort this right out. But
um,
yeah, and then it was ended
play
up
tubular
resulting. It was
bells.
Harvard, if you remember, and if it shouts out back to a paywalled episode. But what's that fucking guy, Phineas Gage? Where do you think they
Mhm.
took him? Fucking Fallen probably looked at his ass.
Fair enough.
Not literally. I think that he was dead by
No,
that
not
point, but
his,
you know what I mean? One of his students or something, you
yeah,
know?
not his ass, his skull.
Yeah, you know what I
Um,
mean.
yeah. Um, it and it's heartening to see that there was such an emphasis on um helping, especially there's a lot of blind deaf children rolling around
Yeah.
here, which
A lot of
is
poor being helped. Yeah, it was fairly charitable, the whole thing. Yeah.
the Mark Peterson does say here that Boston was sort of stretched to the limits of its Christian compassion when you like dump 30,000 freaking Irish people, hungry
Yeah.
Irish people, on the
That was
shores.
48 too. By the same year as that fucking revolution in Germany was the year that they had the famine in Ireland. So imagine that kind of fucking wave of immigrants.
So
Um,
yeah, what a misery, man.
yeah, it's really
Um,
bad. But okay, but we're running pretty late here. I want to try to speed
sorry,
things up. Yeah.
fair.
So there's a couple more things I want to hit though. And so in the wake of the Civil War, Boston, well, the Boston Athenaeum, by the way, was like this place where they collected all these records from the South. They were like,
Hmm.
let's not let what's his name, the guy who burned all that shit down there.
Uh, 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 not Custer. It's an S. Sherman.
Sherman, yes.
There you
Let's
go.
not Sherman. Let Sherman burn absolutely everything. And Boston's like literati basically went down there and said, "Let's get everything we can." And as a
Hmm.
result, today, indeed, the best place to look into sort of records and information about the Confederacy is Boston at the Boston Athenaeum Library, which we can also go visit if we'd like. But I say that to say this. So Boston sort of asserted itself in the post-war literary slash cultural world as being this sort of cosmopolitan hub of learning. I mean, that's what it's viewed as today. It's a fact.
Hmm.
Um, and here's the issue, though, is that the people who did it sort of had this sort of funky. They were like very pro union, and they had this sort of idea of themselves. They sort of look back through Massachusetts history, and they said we want to reimagine our role in the history of America here. Because
Hmm.
as we've gone through this episode, you'll notice that like even though Massachusetts sort of like wanted to be this sort of exemplary place where they didn't do slave labor and stuff, and throughout the book you'll see countless examples of these people being forward thinking and all this other stuff, and and charitable and all that stuff. um but after the war they wanted to have this idea that basically America, Massachusetts is the spirit of America, and that is indeed on our fucking license plates, the
Hmm.
spirit of America. And this was a revisionist history, because now we come to the thesis of the book. The thesis of the book, which I've been waiting all this time to get to, is that Massachusetts was never an essential part of American history. Massachusetts existed in spite of America.
Hey, now.
Massachusetts is a special place of self determination and a difference. We're just built different.
Hell yeah, brother.
But basically the idea though is
Hell yeah.
prior to particularly the Civil War is really what buttoned this up, is what the book theorizes essentially.
I have the
Was
quote, yeah.
read it, yeah.
Yeah. Southern secession merely revealed a long-hidden truth. The city-state of Boston had been absorbed by a nation-state that the South had built, Virginia. There was a Boston once, but the city-state of Boston was no more.
Right. So this idea that Boston, the city and its hinterland, New England, was its own entity, and I think all of what we said before is very indicative of such,
Mm.
given the whole Puritan independence thing, the John Adams, the literally being a sovereign citizen saying we never were your
The
fucking
rebellions.
slaves.
Yeah.
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 But basically I think the thesis of this book is like, man, look what we gave up by being part of America. Like, look what we
Hmm.
gave. Like, look what Massachusetts gave up. It could have been a real experiment in self determination, but they ended up just due to market forces and sort of
Mm-hmm.
entropy and this idea of like wanting to be at the cutting edge of culture. Like I don't
Mm-hmm.
remember that guy's, oh, Parker, Francis Parker.
Mm-hmm.
Um he was this like he by the way, he's the guy who came up with footnotes.
Wow. No
Yeah.
shit.
So
Yeah, that's right.
this Boston author was like, I got an idea. In order to make sure you understand what's going on, we're putting footnotes at the bottom of the page.
Just so
And
you know, I'm not bullshitting you, all right?
yeah,
This
but
is
in doing so, so that's a great piece of like sort of what's the word here? Evidentiary storytelling, right? That's great.
hmm
But he was a revisionist historian. He was a
mm,
revisionist historian who made this meme, this idea that the history of America starts in Boston, which is somewhat true because, you know, the revolution started there. But the way that the Boston people during the revolution saw things was no, no, this is Boston's fight, and the rest of America's just jumping in to
yeah.
our fight. It's us.
Yeah.
We don't even
Yeah.
know if we want to be with you guys later. And they did
Yeah.
end up, and listen, there's consequences that will never fucking live down. But I think the thesis of the well, I don't think I know the thesis of this book essentially is this idea that you know, I think they gave up a lot by lumping themselves in with slave owning aristocratic freedom nuts like freedom nut race mixers like Thomas Jefferson um who just love France because they think they're a more pure version of liberalism and will like fuck over other Americans in order to like support France. It's crazy, this guy.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, Adams did buy uh all that land. You said
Who?
yourself. Adams bought all that land as president from the French, right?
That was Jefferson.
Oh, I thought you were talking. Okay, all right, all right. I did think you were talking about Jefferson at the time.
It
Yeah,
was Jefferson.
yeah, yeah. Okay.
Jefferson did it, and it was basically well, it was, and I think the book says this pretty well. Is that he was like, listen, they needed that land, but
We needed
oh,
that
the
land,
reason we
Karen.
needed that land, Karen. Why would you make that slaveholder land, Karen?
It's all the land we had.
What happened to freedom?
It's right
Yeah,
around the corner.
so
Jimmy just saying, just keep walking. It's right around the corner.
it's right around the River Valley.
Go
It's right
ahead,
over
just
there.
keep
Just go,
walking.
go in, go in. Yeah. But
The
yeah, I don't know. What do you
demise.
think? What do you think? Do you think we did it?
This is a great book.
I do
One,
recommend the book.
yeah. The demise of the city-state of Boston came as a whimper drowned out by an enormous bang, that being the American Civil War.
Yeah.
Like, and one point I appreciate that he makes is that, which you know say as well. Boston, it was all post hoc. The idea that it was always d destined, always going toward America, the
Yeah.
same place. That all happened on the fly, just like the show, um, minus all the preparation. But the idea that we're just looking back now, assuming that America was an inevitability, um, rather than just the way the cards fell,
Yeah.
um, and that that puts a yeah puts a point on the book.
It puts an interesting thought in your head, which is it's very I like any book that really challenges a major cornerstone of my previous thinking. You know what I mean?
Mhm. No,
And I think this
absolutely.
is most people's cornerstone of their thinking, with Massachusetts being like sort of like this sort of stepping stone to what we now view as the rich American tradition of imperialism or whatever. But it's very different, very different. And
He
I don't
says
have much more to say about it.
he says right. I'm sorry, I won't drag any
No, no,
longer.
no, no, no. Go ahead.
This book will have served its purpose if it encourages readers to calculate the value of a common form of polity that national consolidation brushed aside, once embodied in the city-state of Boston.
Well said, Mr. Peterson.
Yes, indeed. I think we should all pay more mind
But
to.
the American history was a bang, and the Massachusetts independence was a whimper in the belly of a whale. Love
Belly of a
Israel.
frog. In the belly of a frog. Yeah, it's good stuff. I have my last words.
Okay, good. So
If
www.historyhomos.com for the RSS feed. We're available on iTunes, YouTube, Spotify, Odyssey, BitChute, Rockfin, Rumble, and most importantly at historyhomospod.substack.com. You like this episode? You want to hear about William Blackstone? You want to hear about what others? We referenced another paid episode
Billy
recently.
Blackstone, you want to hear about the
Oh,
changes in the land?
that was a
That
free
too.
episode. Yeah.
The Jewish world of Alexander Hamilton.
Free episode, but either ways, but there's a bunch of really
sorry.
great pertinent bonus episodes that are behind the paywall. historyhomospod.substack.com. Please subscribe there. You like this show? 100% more show if you go subscribe. 100% more show. It's another show per week. Get over there and subscribe. Plus it's kind of a cool platform, so go check it out and hang out. Also, you can join us at our Telegram group at time of recording, still the friendliest place on the internet. t.me/historyhomos is the channel. t.me/historyhomos chat is the chat. And you can also follow us across social media at historyhomospod. You can email me your size and address or any questions, comments, or concerns at historyhomos@gmail.com. And you can get email your size and address if you want to get an Uncle Ted t-shirt, which I have right here.
We're selling
Doc's
your
still in.
we're selling your size to Israel. We're
Sure.
we're telling them your shirt size. I'm sorry.
No, don't tell them we're selling any of their information.
I'm
Please.
kidding.
We have a
sorry,
very
Scott.
low tech
That's so true.
t-shirt sales. It's not let anybody nervous. It's nothing crazy.
Fair,
There's a box
fair
of
enough.
shirts in my basement, a bunch of them. If you want one, email me. We'll to figure it out. Okay. Die with
It's a nice
dignity. What do you want to say?
This is from the phrenology folks. I'm just rewording it a tad. Let none be uncared for, no matter how deformed, how vicious, how loathsome even he may be. Let it be regarded as a call to help a brother.
Later, homos. Later, brothers.
Charters burned, a man stood alone by the harbor's turn. William's eyes on the edge of fate, planted thought where the world was late. The city rose from the Puritan dream, not by king's gold but a silver gleam. No crown, no throne could bind their land. They struck their coin with their own hand. Silver, silver, fortune flame, round as the moon but not the same. Tossed in hands that won't obey, they made a world their own way. Boston burns with silver light, the city-state in black and white. Cotton's voice in the pulpit curled, spoke of devils and a just made world. John Hull's mint rang clear and proud. Silver spoke when the law grew loud. Winthrop's eyes on a hilltop glow said, let the city show the world how to go. John Adams wrote in Midnight Fire, freedom born of a local desire. No empire holds this winding coast. They broke their bread, they made their boast. The sacred commonwealth, proud and small, but free. That meant more than all. Silver, silver, sharp and clean, stamped with truth, not with a queen. Coins like stars in rebel skies, cast from will, not compromise.
with thought, we mint with purpose, and we speak with silver wings.